Committee to order on March 27, 2024. I would like to announce first that John Rapper has resigned from the committee, but as a person that has had a lot of input, we've invited him to sit at the table and continue to have input. He will be a non-voting person. The first item we have on the agenda is the approval of minutes from March 20th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
Whoa, I guess the speakers are on. Are we voting on the March 11th also, or are we skipping the 11th?
I don't think the 11th we're done yet, just the 20th we're done. You haven't gotten the 11th done yet, right? We didn't vote on those. That was the week you were gone on vacation.
March 11th?
Yeah, I think we,
We skipped it because we're outside.
No, March, this was the outside one.
Oh, this one, okay. So then-
yeah, no,
okay.
I got a copy of a draft of the 11th.
Okay.
And it's on, I think it's on the agenda.
We just haven't,
Okay.
what's on the agenda is the 20th, right?
I have an updated one.
They're both on there,
that
Chief.
was.
Oh, they are?
And we can, I don't have any problem passing them over.
You put them both on agenda?
Okay, well, we'll start with March
If they both went out,
20th,
that's fine.
because I've already talked
Okay,
about
so
that
that's
one.
the
let's-
original one.
This is what I just got here.
Yeah, you're right, the one that you handed out, the hard copy agenda, does not have the 11th, but Lorraine did.
Somebody updated them and I didn't notice.
Okay, why don't we, I'm
My fault.
gonna suggest we pass over the 11th then,
Yep,
just so there's
that's
no
what I would
confusion.
do.
Okay.
Okay. So, in front of us, we have the March 20th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, a motion to accept the March 20th
Can't,
meeting.
you're not
Yeah.
a voting member. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from March 20th.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have the life cycle cost analysis presentation from the engineers.
Okay, I'm just going to start our PowerPoint presentation here. And we had our own little agenda of what's in the PowerPoint presentation, and we're starting with Dom, who is from GGD Engineers.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back here. I think last time when we met, I was, we were at the library? Oh, or the.
Virtual, we did the virtual.
Virtual,
Yeah.
okay. So we reviewed the systems that we were proposing to study. We've since provided schematic design for a number of options, had those estimated, ran the energy analysis, and then the subsequent life cycle analysis. So just go into that. The options that we had talked about was an air source heat pump, chiller heater, that had a backup boiler that would be running hot water, chill water to fan coil units and air handling units. Option 2 was an air source VRF. The VRF stands for variable refrigerant flow. So instead of a hydronic system, this is a refrigerant-based system. It is still a heat pump system. It would go into similar fan coils and air handling units that operate with refrigeration. And then lastly, we looked at a geothermal ground source heat pump version of a VRF system. So it would have groundwater, and then we would have a heat exchanger, heat pump system that would provide the heating and cooling for the building. We also looked at PV, photovoltaic systems, so we'll discuss that as well tonight. So just the little flow chart. The life cycle analysis consists of an energy simulation for each of the options. We use the proposed building from HKT. That architecture put that into an energy model, modeled the building occupancy usage, the different characteristics, the system operating characteristics of the different heat pump systems, and using the local weather data and utility bill data. And then we also looked at the next step is determining, once we get the energy usage, that gives us our operating costs. Then we've got to determine what the installation costs. So we did our own estimates, but coordinated those with a third-party estimator to get them, close and reconciled. And then we estimated maintenance and replacement costs for the different options, and factoring in those cost factors. First, operating maintenance replacement costs. Over a 50-year study period, the system generally with the lowest cost of ownership would be recommended. We also did factor in potential incentives from the utility company, and with the geothermal version, that could potentially qualify for a federal tax credit. Next slide, please. All the options, the three options, were held to the same design criteria to keep it kind of apples to apples. So the local weather data for heating on a design day would be 5 degrees outside. For cooling would be 91 degrees outside with a corresponding wet bulb or your humidity condition of 73. Those are pretty much driven by the local weather data, and the indoor conditions are driven by the code, the energy efficiency code. So for offices, data rooms, living areas, that would be 70 degrees for heating, air conditioning at 75 degrees with the humidity level of no more than 55%. The hallways, corridors, entryways, restrooms, those are all slightly higher. Apparatus bay, general storage, vestibules, those would be heating and ventilation only, set at 70 degrees. We also have unoccupied temperature setback provided for areas that are not occupied 24/7. Option one, I think we went over this virtually, just, I don't know that we've got to go over all the pros and cons, but just kind of a reminder. This would consist of an outdoor air source heat pump chiller that generates hot water, chilled water. It's piped with 4-pipe system, so hot water supply and return, chill water supply and return to indoor fan coil units that are doing your space heating and cooling, and then central air handling units that are taking care of your ventilation loads. This, could be a fan coil or an induction air system. Both would work with the air source heat pump chiller. We would recommend a backup boiler, just in the event that the air source heat pump failed in the wintertime. We're not stuck in, we've still got a backup source of heat. Next slide. This was the diagrammatic drawing we put together that shows, we've got an air source heat pump. It's piped, again, 4 pipes to indoor units and the air handling units. We also have supplemental heating panels so that if areas are not occupied and don't need ventilation air, the fan coils could shut off and the air handling unit zones could close down. So we're saving energy there. Next slide, please. So option 2, this is again air source heat pump, but it's a variable refrigerant flow system. So instead of hot water, chill water, we've got refrigeration piping. Very similar approach though, with that main difference. Really, one of the pros of it is because you have less piping, it comes in typically at a lower first cost. The cons are, with refrigerant piping, it's a little more difficult to find leaks if there's ever a leak. Hot water, chill water, you typically see a spot on the ceiling tiles, even though you don't like it. It's actually probably a good thing in terms of trying to trace down leaks. Both would have relatively the same type of maintenance requirements in terms of condensate management, drain pans, piping, filter changes. Next slide. And this is a diagrammatic drawing, very similar. As you can kind of notice though, there is less piping. And then lastly, ground source heat pump, and that's tied to a VRF system, but instead of being an air source heat pump, it's a ground source heat pump version of that. So that would be the space-mounted air handling units would be that VRF system. The air handling unit would have its own heat pump section that would have the groundwater, and then it has a groundwater source heat pump for the heating and cooling of the ventilation air. Next slide. And that's a diagram of that. We've got the well field will have to come in, provide the pumps. The pumps would then go to the groundwater to refrigerant heat exchangers to serve the fan coil units. And then there'd be a set of pumps that pump the groundwater to the air handling units, which have their own built-in ground source heat pump. We also looked at, what we did too is for each of the options, we included supplemental heating systems. How those are included vary based upon the plant or the medium. So with the air source, it's a hot water radiant panel. With the VRF system, it's an electric radiant system because we don't have the hot water generation. And with the geothermal, that would also be a hot water. We could go ground source to a hot water system and go to hot water hydronic systems. In terms of the energy modeling, these were done as just backup systems, with it understood that the reason for doing so is with an electric radiant system, that has a lower energy efficiency than the VRF system would. So you'd really only want that to operate if the VRF system failed. So you'd have the supplemental heating system. So in terms of the energy modeling, it was not included. However, in terms of the life cycle, for each of the options, it was carried as an allowance for all the options. And that holds true for the apparatus bay heating system. Your primary heating system would be the hydronic or overhead hydronic fan coil or VRF refrigerant-based heat pumps. And then the floor slab would be supplemental. The reason for doing that is radiant systems are slow to react. And apparatus bays have, doors that are open. During cold weather, it's going to take a while for that radiant system to catch up. So that's why you have a fan coil system that's going to be quick to pick up that heat loss. So that's the primary heat system, and then these are supplemental.
I thought just the opposite was true. I thought if you had the radiant floor heating, that floor acts like a big radiator. It gets hot, right, or it gets warm. So when the door opens and closes, it's warm, so it radiates the heat back up, as opposed to when that door opens and you're heating an object as opposed to heating the air, right? Because with the overhead, you're heating the air, right? And that, when the overhead doors go
Right.
open, heat goes out. So that's why.
No, that's true, as long as when the doors are, closed, and if they're closed for a while, that's, everything you said is true. The concern is when it's opened on, say, a 0-degree day, you're gonna have a big inrush of cold air that the radiant heating system is not going to be quick enough to heat up. So in conjunction, it's a very good system. I wouldn't recommend just a
One or the other.
radiant floor slab heating system. I would be okay with just an air side system because it's going to handle both, but, it might not be as energy efficient overall. But not knowing if they're definitely gonna be in, they weren't modeled, it wasn't modeled that way. It was just carried as a cost for the life cycle analysis.
Thank you.
And they kept apples to apples that way. So, feel it's still a very good analysis. Next slide. So this might be difficult to read on the screen, but we did provide copies, and it's within this report, the Engineering Economic Analysis Report. And there's 3 charts that we're gonna go over on the next 3 slides. And very simply, the 3 charts are the same information, but the first one is without any utility company incentives. The second one includes utility company incentives, and the third one includes utility and company incentives plus federal tax credit for the geothermal option. Why we did that is because we know that utility company incentives are, once you get into a program, they're pretty much, guaranteed. You've got to sign a memo of understanding, you get in that program, they're pretty much, close to guaranteed. The federal tax credit, that's going to be while it's right now the law, and, that's subject to change. So we just, provided it based upon our best available knowledge. The other thing too, to be said with the federal tax credit, that would involve, paperwork filing that's beyond our expertise. It's filing really a tax return related to, the geothermal system. We could certainly assist in providing information, but we're not qualified tax attorneys or consultants. So with that said, again, option 1 is the air source hydronic heat pump system, 2 is the air source VRF, and 3 is a geothermal VRF system. Some of the key terms, first cost. The option 2 is the lowest at 2.63 million. The air source hydronic is 2.86 million, and then the geothermal is 4.23 million. In terms of the energy efficiency, the EUI, that stands for the energy usage intensity. That's a good metric, lower the better. Geothermal is the most efficient, followed by the air source VRF, and then the air source hydronic. Option 2, the air source VRF has an instant payback compared to the baseline hydronic because it has a lower first cost and it's more efficient. The geothermal system has a payback of 45 years. This was a 50-year study. Reason for the 50-year study is the geothermal piping systems are pretty much guaranteed for 50 years. The material. The other thing to note on these charts is that you see the 20, 30, and 40-year replacements. Why this is done is because you could see the air source equipment has multiple replacements compared to the geothermal system. And that's because the geothermal system is going to have more equipment in the ground and protected within mechanical rooms, whereas the air source equipment just doesn't have the same lifespan. Therefore, at 20 years, typically the condensing units will have to be replaced. And then again, at 40 years, they would also have to be replaced in another 20 years. And then at the 30 years, that is really like the air handling equipment. That would be more of a 30-year change. And for the geothermal, that would be the air handling units and the geothermal heat pumps, which would have approximately a 30-year lifespan. Any questions on this chart? If not, we could go to the next. So the next chart, the difference is we added this column that says Mass Save Heat Pump Adder Incentive. So I want to be clear, that is just an incentive for the air source heat pumps. There's also potentially more money to get from Mass Save, but that will relate to the whole building. And, lighting, not only HVAC, lighting, envelope, your EUI targets and trying to lower that EUI, and because when you lower that more, the Mass Save incentive will be higher. So they have like a base rate, but then they have this heat pump adder. We don't know what the entire building would be, capable of getting for an incentive, but we do know, based upon an estimated load tonnage, what the heat pump incentive will be. So that's what that number, which ranges from 192,000 for option 1 to 200,000 for option 2, and then goes all the way to 900,000 for the geothermal. So that's just their program. They give an incentive of $4,500 a ton for geothermal systems, $1,200 a ton for VRF systems, and I think $800 for the air source hydronic system. And actually, the VRF system's a blended rate because we've got VRF systems plus we've got an air source heat pump for the rooftop unit. So it's kind of, I think, matches like $1,000 per ton. So that's why it's not a little bit greater. So when you factor those in, we added also another column saying the net investment, which is just the gross capital minus that incentive, that becomes the net investment. Another thing to add is all these mass save incentives, that would not come to fruition until the project is complete. That's when they pay it, once they can see it was installed, verify it. So one thing to note with all these, in terms of budgets, the gross capital investment would have to be carried with the understanding that there might be money coming back in the future. When that is done, the big difference is the option 2 still has an instant payback. The EUIs do not change by this. It's really just the paybacks and total life cycle savings that change. So with this, the geothermal system starts to get a little bit more attractive. It's now a 33-year payback. Still doesn't have total life cycle savings that are as good as option 2. So based on just this info alone, it still looks like option 2 would be the best option. But if we go to the next chart, what we did here was we added, in addition to the mass save, we added what we think could be achieved through the IRA federal tax credit, and we factored that at 25%. The reason for that number is it's 30%, but when a project is publicly funded with tax exempt bonds, there's a 15% reduction of that. So that's why we went to 25. There are potential adders for domestic product, really steel and iron, but that's not a full portion of the, of the 4.2 million. Only a portion of that would qualify for that additional 10%. So we kind of want to be more on the conservative side, and that's why we erred on 25%. It might be able to get a little greater. Again, it really would entail getting a tax consultant attorney, and then really what we've seen on some other projects is you've got to go through, the schedule of values and kind of really identify what those are to come up with the final number that you would submit. To the,
Who does, are we responsible for that? Is that something that is part of the construction docs, or who's responsible for figuring that all out? If we want to get that money back.
yeah, what we've seen with other municipalities is that they would bring on board a tax consultant to assist. And then the design team would certainly be a partner to help with what we can, like provide the documentation, the design that justifies your load calcs, your capacities, the great thing about it is it's a geothermal system, but it's not just the well field. It's the entire geothermal system, from the well field to the diffusers. So that's why what we've carried is, really 25% of that HVAC cost. The other thing that another partner would have to be is either the general contractor or the construction manager that's going to be able to share all the bid data from the HVAC contractor that identifies, like one thing that will not qualify would be like a vehicle exhaust system, because that's not a geothermal system. It's not tied to the geothermal system. You would have a VRF system, whether you have a geothermal system or an air source heat pump. So that would not really qualify for a 30% tax credit. But anything to do with the geothermal heating, cooling, ventilation system would. So that's why, it's really a detailed process. And then it is tricky for municipalities that are tax exempt because you don't file taxes. So, but you're filing taxes, a tax form with the IRS and Department of Treasury. To
Yeah,
get
it's nice that this program now does
Now it
provide
is.
incentives to
Absolutely.
municipalities. It didn't until pretty
It's all,
recently.
right, it was with the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act that put the provisions in There's a lot of stipulations, and it's not just geothermal, it's also what I'll get into next too with the PV systems.
Question. Dom, do you have any feeling for these incentives and tax credits? Do you see any horizon with expiries on these?
As of now, for this project, it would not. It would still qualify.
Okay, thank you.
Now, one thing I will say is, you know, Congress could pass a different law that changes things. You know, that we don't have a crystal
Congress?
ball.
Did you say Congress?
Oh, they would try to pass a law that would.
I feel like we're safe.
Our
and
Congress?
secure.
Now, are any of these systems chill beam systems or something similar? Is that what the?
It's a passive chill beam, but what we've really studied was fan coils. Because what we've seen is, it just makes more sense to use fan coils. So with option one be hot water, chill water based. With option 2 and 3, they'd be refrigerant based fan coils. One air source VRF, the other one Geo VRF.
Okay. You had mentioned also, and just before you go on to PV, I wanted to get these out. You talked about, and I know we've mentioned this before, that you talked about the unoccupied area it's not consistent 24-hour heating when it's not occupied. Would we have the ability, because to be honest with you, there's times I'm in there at 3 o'clock in the morning, or the deputy's in there or whatever, so we have the ability to override that, I assume?
Under any of the 3 options.
Okay.
Yep.
And some of the other stations I've talked to, one of their chief's biggest complaints has been that they haven't had the ability to control the temperature in different rooms. So my room is cooking hot and their room is cold, and that's a problem because we can't adjust them.
How it's been modeled, how all 3 systems have been designed to date or planned are that they would all have their own temperature control.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So how comfortable are you that this project would qualify for the mass save and federal credits?
So for the mass save, what we would need to do is, once a system is selected, kind of get on board with the utility companies and get enrolled in, with a memo of understanding for that program. And I would have a high degree of certainty that, you know, they could get on, and as long as we're going with, you know, one version of an air source heat pump or geothermal, they're gonna qualify for these and probably more. Like I said, that would relate to energy efficient lighting, envelope design, the whole building approach. Again, the federal tax credit, you know, everything we read, you know, if it's a geothermal system, it should qualify. It's just that it's also not going to be provided until the project is completed. Any direct pay option.
So that's why you have to carry
Yep.
the amount in your budget.
Correct.
It makes sense.
You have done geothermal-driven systems in the recent past, so you
None of them
haven't-
have gotten it yet, because this is just 2022, the IRA Act allowed it, and then it really wasn't till 2023, mid-2023, that they started providing guidance.
Will a mixed fuel system be penalty?
A mixed fuel system, you would not get any mass save incentive. They will not give any rebates if there's a gas line on the, they will allow like a generator to be a diesel generator, but they will not allow a gas line and give you a rebate.
Right. Now, in July, the new energy requirements are coming online, and the HERS rating, I know for residential, is dropping from 52 down to 42 or 45. Do you see something similar happening? with
They've already
commercial?
taken place in
Very
January
first it came online.
for commercial.
Well, I know, but there's gonna be another drop in July 1st, at least in residential.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I'm not aware of that for commercial.
Okay.
One of the big things has been energy efficiency of the energy recovery wheels. That's gone up quite a bit.
Okay.
Madam Chair, question? Dom, you're talking about 25 wells, is that correct?
I believe that is.
Carmel? And how deep are those typically?
Those are typically somewhere in the order, it could, first thing, we're not a well field designer, I will say that. So if we go that route, there'd be another consultant that'd have to be brought on. They typically would range from 500 to 700 feet in that range, to be in that 25.
Okay. Thank you.
Is
If
there,
you went to 300 feet, which is another common, you just need to go with more wells.
Okay.
is there then an added cost to the project for designing the wells? Okay, so that's not accounted for here.
No, when we're working with Colliers, they had no idea we were doing it, so it's an exception.
Okay.
If it goes to, we have a little bit of, maybe a deep well, some general
We-
stuff. Yeah.
Right now, PAR is doing the borings for the geotechnical analysis, and they're gonna use some of the data to just determine big picture feasibility of the
Okay,
wells.
okay.
But
That's
then
all
if
we-
we decide to go with geothermal, we need more well design, as Dom says.
But the estimated cost for drilling wells is included here, correct?
Under option 3,
Yeah,
correct.
Right, okay.
So you're drilling to get in contact with groundwater?
No, these are closed loop.
Okay,
So it's a vertical closed loop well.
so you're
And
just relying on the Earth's temperature?
Yeah, this was 25 at 650 feet deep. So 4 tons per well.
And they take up a bit of space. There's about 25 feet between wells, give or take.
Right.
So they're really gonna spread out over a great portion of the site. Don't forget, they're not like a cluster, so just. for
What does
everybody
that
to know.
do for where do these go and how do they impact the site?
Everywhere.
Right.
You know, they could be under soil, under paving.
Okay, so they can be,
and-
they can be 100%
Yeah,
underground
so
and
they're
not,
not like the other well that people might be used to. It's called a vertical standing column well. That's an open well. And that has a pump, within a manhole.
Yep.
This is not like that. These will have lateral runs underground, 6 feet below. They will go to a vault, and from the vault, you will then have more laterals running to the different wells. And they typically run in a reverse return pattern, and maybe you've got like 8 to 10 wells on one lateral, another 8 to 10, another 8 to 10, and they all go to a vault, and then from that vault, you go into the mechanical.
but all that becomes invisible once once the project is
The vault
complete.
is what you need access to.
Okay,
Because the vault will have the shut-off valves, balancing valves, air vents for all the other lateral lines. The pumps themselves will be in a mechanical room.
okay.
And where would the vault be located relative to the site plan? Do we know?
We have not coordinated that yet.
You think that you envision that as being a solvable problem or a hard problem to solve?
I think we could probably solve it.
What was- I-
Finding a location for the vault.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, we'll find it. I mean, we have a lot underground. We have, we have stormwater underground and,
But it's a balancing act.
yeah, we
There's-
just have
yeah.
to work on the whole plan, so.
I guess one thing we just kind of skipped over was, when you do factor in, and, the what-ifs of the mass save and the tax credit, is the geothermal also becomes an instant payback with that revised net investment, as it would be 2.28 million versus 2.67 million. The other, I'm not sure if we got the next page. Yeah, the other thing we did, one of the, I'm not sure if we're going for LEED, but we always use this metric. It's a green energy program. And what we do is just kind of compare it for energy cost savings percentage. So you can see, regardless of the option, compared to your LEED baseline system, they're all very energy efficient systems, ranging from 34% to almost 48% more efficient than a LEED baseline system, which is an older, to be honest, is an older code. It's the 2010 energy code. And that will be changing once the LEED V4.1 and maybe even LEED V5 come on board.
Now, are we making decisions tonight about this?
Did you expect us to make a decision tonight on what we want to do?
Yes.
Yes.
Unless you want to change the schedule.
But we realize it's a lot,
Just
there's a lot to
asking.
cover
Yeah.
tonight, but it'll come into the conversation, but the reason Dom is here is because he has to do work in design development, and he has to design to one system,
Yep,
not designing to three.
Right.
So if you delay, he delays.
gotcha.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
We have Sean in the audience here as our facilities guy. Is there some way we could ask him
We
his
can ask him,
thoughts?
Sean, what are you thinking?
You gotta come up so we can hear you.
You have to come up so you can be heard.
I mean, I'm preferential to option 2, but that's just my opinion.
Well, that's what we want to know. Why option 2 over option 1 or 3?
So, I mean, option 3, I'm just kind of scarred from issues at the senior center, if I'm being honest. And it's hard to find vendors, at least in my experience in the area, that are knowledgeable enough to keep up with the system long-term. That's been my experience in the short time I've been here. And I just prefer the refrigerant loop system over the water system. I understand that the leak finding thing, like he was saying, that definitely makes it easier. But again, I like the refrigerant option.
Thank you, Sean. Well, I'll start off by saying, oh, Mitch?
I'm sorry, I thought I saw you.
Yeah, no, I am surprised that with the incentives, that the geothermal is, once you get that money back, is actually the least expensive of the three. I was not anticipating that. I assumed that it would be the least expensive over 50 years, and it's hard to really envision how accurate, that kind of a projection might be. So it intrigues me for that reason, with the biggest downside is you have to front all the money. One of the thoughts that I had is maybe there is a way, if we have some way to project when that if we went that route, when that tax refund might come in, both the tax refund and the mass save, and whether the bonds could be set up in such a way to let that roll in and perhaps lessen the tax impact of this project for the first couple of years, or pay off that, maybe front load it and pay off that extra $2 million right away, put that in year 1 or year 2 of the bond, know that we'll have the money in place, and then that goes away, and then it's kind of invisible in a way. It still has to get approved by town meeting at the full amount, but the town in that way would never be able to pay it. I don't think anybody in this room can really say factually, yeah, it can really work that way. So my thinking is that if we have at least some interest, and that's, why I'm glad you asked the question, do we have to decide tonight? I would love to reach out to our finance director and kind of float that idea and get his thoughts on, is this idea reasonable, or is he scared to death of it? He may be able to talk to other finance directors that have gone through similar things, although, this is brand new, but I'm sure folks in his field have been talking about it.
Amortizing the debt down is prudent, but,
Yeah.
it's.
You still have to raise and appropriate the
Yeah, oh, yeah,
sum,
yes.
so it doesn't help us in the upfront. As somebody was on the building committee for the senior center, I really never want to say geothermal to anybody else ever again, so that was.
That was an open loop, though.
It
Right.
is, I know it's
A
different.
very different system, so that's part of the problem, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's part of the problem, but I am leaning toward option 2, but anybody else?
Well, if I look at the numbers, I see option 3, with the incentives, it's the cheapest, it's the most efficient, it has the highest life cycle savings, and it's consistent with our being a stretch code community, and it's in our town master plan to be sustainable. So for those reasons, I would certainly be in favor of number 3.
Anyone else?
I want to hear those two.
Well, I agree with what Tom is saying. I'm also surprised, though, that it is the cheapest in so many ways. From a sustainability point of view, I think it is preferable. I hear your concerns. I don't know enough about the senior center. But I do know people that have put geotherm in more recently have had much more positive experiences. So I'm fine with option 2, but I think, that we have many different responsibilities on this committee, right? And a big one that's very much in discussion right now is the budget. And ultimately, the town's gonna spend less money if they go with the geotherm. But, okay, so I'm not super definitive at this point, but I'm leaning towards geotherm.
Well, this committee has a fiduciary responsibility to the town. That's number one. And this is 5% of the top line number we're dealing with today. It's a big bite. And as much as I like to see something that's sustainable like this and somewhat state-of-the-art, it's a big number. And I think, you're going to get pushback from people. So I would go for number 2, if I had a vote.
Dan?
I'm up.
I'm going last.
You're gonna. Well, the geothermal comes in less with all the incentives, and it's more energy efficient. But I understand from a facilities point of view, I understand Sean's point of view. And so I don't think we could go wrong with either 2 or 3, but I would lean towards 2.
Chief? You're
So,
last.
yeah, I know I'm last. The concept of geothermal is outstanding, right? And the payback over time and the instant is great. We have to sell this project at town meeting. If we try to sell this project $2.5 million higher than it is, I don't care how often, how much we tell them, you're going to get it back in taxes, it's going to cause a problem. People are going to push back, say, well, is that guaranteed? And what are we going to say to them when they say, is that guaranteed? You just said we can't guarantee it 100%. I can't guarantee you 100% you're going to get it back.
Yeah, I mean, the same holds true for school construction projects. You
Sure.
can't- The state does not guarantee.
But people vote for
Yeah.
for school projects. People don't vote for fire stations as well as they vote for school projects. And I've heard a lot about, oh my God, it costs so much.
Yeah.
And as much as I am intrigued by the idea of geothermal, strictly from a getting this project sold point of view, I have to go with option 2. That's my opinion.
I don't see it as hard to sell if someone like our finance director can do the bond payment structure in that way and buy into that. If he's not comfortable with that, I agree, it becomes a much harder sell. People are gonna be most interested, what will this cost me per year? That's the biggest number. I see.
Guarantee that.
Can I personally guarantee, would I pay the 2 million and change? No, I wouldn't.
But that's my
Right,
point. If
right.
you're sitting out there
Yeah.
in the audience, and I'm just going from, and I understand what you're saying, Mitch.
Yeah.
that People are worried about that. What's it gonna cost me a year? I understand that. But I know the feedback I've gotten. I know the emails I've gotten, cut this, cut this,
Sure.
cut this.
Yeah,
Okay? And to go in there and say, we're gonna go with the most expensive heating system because we believe we will get money back in taxes.
yeah, but I think it's much more than a belief. I think
me, it's
you
not.
just said, you'll get a letter of agreement from Mass Save pretty quick, certainly before a town meeting. I don't know how it works with the IRS.
You seen the
and stuff
federal
like
government
that.
lately? I'm not trying to be wild, I'm not being sarcastic, I'm very serious. We don't know what's gonna happen in November. We don't know what's gonna happen with, are things gonna be repealed, are things gonna change? I don't know that.
Yeah.
And if we are promising we're gonna get, how much could we get back from the IRS? $2 million?
Option 3,
900 million.
2 altogether, 2 million altogether.
Yeah, 900
Mass
from
Save.
900,
900 is mass save,
yeah, and a million,
1 million.
yeah,
about $1 million.
yeah.
If they say you're not having that back.
Hence the
I,
sunk- then
I
it's the sunk
think I
cost,
would,
chief.
I would trust Jason Little to make the determination as to how reliable that is, more than anyone in this room.
And Mitch, the other thing is geothermal, it's cost plus beyond this, because what you heard Dom say is you're gonna have to bring a consultant in
Yeah.
to help design those
Yeah,
wells.
no, that's, I think that's a reasonable, I don't know if you're talking $10,000 or $100,000.
Not $10,000, but not $100,000. Somewhere between there. I don't know, because,
Yeah.
you know, we haven't put it in front of
All right,
them.
so
And
s-
usually it goes through Dom anyhow, it's gonna be something like Tracy, right? Tracy,
She's no longer
she's no longer.
around.
Okay, give me a scope, like a rough plus or minus 20% number, what it might be. Or-
70.
Okay, all right. So we're just,
If we're going for option 3,
yeah,
you're easily going to cover the cost of the
Yeah.
consultant and still win
Yeah.
in the overall
yeah.
financial.
Yeah, what, honestly, I am just pleasantly surprised by the geothermal being $200,000 less expensive than either of the other options as soon as we get those incentives, which right now are guaranteed by law. Yes, the country could, could do crazy things.
I also don't think
yeah.
that the citizens are gonna care, Mitch. The citizens are gonna care what that line says when they go to vote. If that line says 40 million, or if it says 38 million, it's gonna make a difference. No matter what we tell them at town meeting, because this is what happens. We go to town meeting, we do the presentation, and 300 people show up.
Yep,
And 4,000 go and vote. Of those 4,000, only 800 or whatever showed up, know what we said. The other ones are looking at that line and saying, no.
yeah, the ballot isn't gonna have the dollar number,
They're gonna know what it is. I know it's not on
Yeah.
the ballot. I understand that.
yeah.
Well, the special town meeting will, right?
Town
Mitch?
meeting absolutely will, yes. Yeah. And that's, I mean, we have a lot of explaining to do at that town meeting, no matter what. We've got to
Yeah.
walk people through this. I would rather say, yeah, we're gonna save you $200,000. I think it is worthwhile. I'm not saying that I'm a definite yes. I want to hear from Jason
We
on,
need to make a decision
on
tonight,
that process.
so that's kind of tough.
Yeah.
We don't have time to hear from Jason. Or we speak to Jason tomorrow, schedule a meeting the next day and vote.
Yeah, I don't know how much time.
Right now, Jason doesn't have, I can tell you right now, you
Yeah.
ask Jason for something right
Well,
now.
he's busy working on his budget. I don't know how much time he would need to do that. So I will ask you, where are you in terms of flexibility? And I'm not saying give us a month.
I just would say, let's get to the end of the presentation.
Okay.
We bring up a lot of the cost things, and there
Okay.
could be other reasons that we want to hold, but
Okay.
Dom will tell me he needs to know this, so he can direct his folks
Yeah,
to move
it's
tomorrow. They're
not-
waiting for that.
I'd say if it's, a week,
Yeah,
2 weeks, maybe.
that's it. Or he's not going to make the DD number, or date.
Yeah, okay.
The
Or-
design of the
or- or-
distribution system is gonna be the same internally. The
For a
source,
portion of it. For like the refrigerant-based VRF, there, but when you go to the air handling unit, it's different. And then with the geothermal, you've got groundwater to refrigerant instead of, on the air handling unit. So there's definitely differences in design. So that's why I'm saying
there are commonalities between.
there are, and that's
two-
why we could be doing that within the next 2 weeks, working on those commonalities and not, lose, all the time.
Madam Chair, why don't we get the rest of the presentation, and we can have a better discussion?
That's a good idea.
And then Dom has another piece of this puzzle, yeah. Here's a conclusion.
These conclusions, basically what we've been discussing. The other item that we mentioned was we did a PV, photovoltaics, roof-mounted PV system study, based upon the available roof area, just under, I think, 74 kW, which would generate just under 90,000 kilowatts per year. That would be approximately 29% of the total building consumption. The estimated construction costs, the base system at $3.50 a watt is $258,000, called $260,000. There's also a smart option, which is a Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target. That costs a little bit more, but it's to enter into that program. But there's also incentives for that, getting into that program. Similar, there's the Inflation Reduction Act, potentially 30% tax credit. Again, that's more like 25 when you take that 15% penalty if you're funding it with tax exempt bonds. There's also other, stipulations. Really recommend getting a tax attorney consultant on board if that was, trying to get those IRA funds. The estimated SMART compensation is roughly $3,700 a year. So it essentially paid back that initial like enrollment fee. Estimated discount paybacks, the base systems, if the town owned it, would be 15 years. With a IRA, goes down to approximately 10 years. If you go into the SMART program, becomes 11-year payback. With IRA, 9 years. Estimated HVAC system impacts, so we looked at option 1, 2, and 3, pairing the PV with those. What does the EUIs become? The EUI for option 1, which is the least efficient HVAC system, goes from 38.7 to 31.4. Option 2 would be at just under 35, go down to just under 25. And then option 3, 32.5, goes to 22.6. One of the things too is fire station, I will say fire stations are one of the most, top energy using buildings. And these numbers are great, for fire stations. And just to think like with the PV, if you get to, what Mass Save does now, they won't allow you to use, PV as an energy reduction strategy. They want you to reduce the EUIs to get the maximized incentives. But for fire stations, like their lowest path is like path 1, where they give the most incentives. For other buildings, ranges from like 25 to 28 EUI. For fire stations, we've kind of been working with them and getting them to acknowledge that it should be higher for fire stations. So I believe on one project, they agreed to like a 30 EUI to get to that most aggressive thing. So just to, show there, I think with option 3, you'd probably be able to get into the most aggressive Mass Save program. So when we said that 900,000, just realize it could probably be even greater than that 900,000. Same holds true for the option 2 as well. So, but these are just, they call their net zero ready at EUI of 25 and under for buildings. So to be at these levels is very good.
Questions?
How much does this actually save us? I'm looking for, what's the annual savings on electricity if we do this, or some other version of that?
So, let me see if we've got it. We also have this report, so I will fully admit I am not the electrical engineer in our team. So we have this whole other report, and I'm hoping they convert that to, yeah. So on the executive summary, I believe.
So it says over a 20-year period, the system would produce an estimated $444,088 in electrical energy cost savings.
So 20 years, 400 and something thousand?
440. It's the
444,000.
third down, paragraph down, Mitch,
Yep.
in the middle of it,
Yep,
right there.
okay.
That paragraph.
I'm just comparing that with the annual electric costs of the HVAC systems to understand. So this would pay for like a third or
Yeah,
so?
that's the 28.5%.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, okay, so I'm calculating a number that's already up there. Thank you.
We should have just put the other number.
Where are you seeing that up there? Is that on the, in the
The
chart that I
second
gave
bullet
you?
point,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
generation,
Yep,
that generation corresponds to roughly just under 30%
okay.
of the
I'll-
bill.
I'll-
And with all these being electric, I'm not sure which option that was compared against.
Yep,
I would probably think the first option,
base,
but then we did do the other PV.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
EY count.
yep. So both of the other options on HVAC are less expensive annually, so the percentage would climb more with option
Correct.
2 and further more with
The
option 3.
percentage.
Yeah. Might I ask another unrelated question? Are these anticipated then to be mounted on the backside of the monitors? Or,
So it's kind of, it's a little bit hard to see in this
Yes.
plan, but this is the apparatus bay right here, and so these are the monitors. They would be mounted on the back of the monitors, and then these are the sloped roofs over the living quarters. And so you've got some over the dormitories here, some over the day room, the fitness room over here. Or no, sorry, that's not that's the day room right there.
Yeah.
what happens if we don't do the monitors? Let's say we make a when we get into budget, we decided we want to, I don't know what, we'll talk about later what the cost of the monitors are. We decide we don't want them, can we still do these panels? Does it change the cost substantially of the panels?
So do you know, Dom, if they were not,
Like
manual,
going
if
more
they
like
were
a
flat.
more flat would go, I think they go a little less expensive. And then the other thing too is we kept, was on option 1, because we didn't put PV panels where we think we're gonna have to put HVAC equipment.
Okay.
So that's the other thing to note, with geothermal, you might even be able to expand the size of the PV.
Okay.
But until we know that,
Yep.
we couldn't.
And my last question for now, did you model the actual site for these panels? There are some trees behind the building. I'm wondering if you.
I am not fully
Okay,
sure of that. I don't know that I don't think we put trees in,
okay.
no, but,
Because there are
Big tree.
trees towards the south on that site that are kind of high, and of course, as we know, there's a slope. I think that's important to understand, whether that's in there or if it's not in there, because that could make a material difference.
yeah, this was, I know was modeled just using, PV watts.
Right, right.
Program, which is
Yeah,
pretty standard across the industry, but
right, but if there are trees in the way, that
could have an impact.
could have an impact. What's the timeline on decision on the PV?
I think that's really a budget issue, right?
yeah, I mean, it's probably not quite so critical. But this is another thing where we would need a specialty consultant to get involved for the PV design. But
Okay.
I think we would want to do that during DD. So if we could, wrap it up in sort of the same time frame that we do for the HVAC, I think that would be helpful.
Could it be treated as an alternate in the bid
I
package?
think we,
Yeah, the electrical system would include provisions for PV ready.
Right.
It has to.
That's pretty much code now.
That's code now.
I like
So-
that idea.
But the actual installation could be
an
a
alternate.
phase 2 modification kind of thing.
The other option always is to do like a purchase agreement. The thing to note with that is you could not qualify for any of the IRA. Those installing contractors typically get that tax credit, and, so that'd be another option.
Madam Chair, question? So your budget from today is 576,000, is that correct?
Was it EV,
Yes.
For the,
250?
The high range proposed budget,
58 is page 2, is that the right page?
Base system,
Yeah.
258.
Yeah, base system is 258. I'm looking,
so I'm a little confused, why the 576 in the budget document?
I believe that came from the estimator at
Okay.
the first round last
yeah,
month.
we didn't have,
Yeah.
that.
Prior
they
to
didn't
the
have this
study.
probably.
Right.
All right,
yeah.
so it's less.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
By a lot.
right. So when we did the cost estimate, GGD was just starting the PV study, so we gave the cost estimator some assumptions to make so that we could carry a number. That obviously changes once the study's done, so I would go with Dom's numbers right now.
And as I said, this would be kind of the smaller size. So I'm not sure what kilowatt was carried in the estimate, but if,
63 or something?
63.7.
63, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little less, because it was 3 to no, I think.
If numbers are gonna change, you change them in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah.
right, but if you've got more in your budget, what it means, like, say you did go with the geothermal, might be able to find a way to make 74 kilowatts, 85, and, you know, you still might have it in the budget.
Yep.
You know, that's,
Okay.
because that 250, 260 would go up if you do go with a larger PV array, if there's more roof real estate available with going with the geothermal system, because your air source heat pumps now are removed and put inside, you know, portions of them are put inside the building and portion of that system is underground.
I think we need to be having the discussion about the monitors, because I'm not very much in support of eliminating the monitors, so I think we can't make a decision about PVs without getting through all of the other content. So I would recommend we keep going.
Great.
Okay. Anybody have questions
And I'm not
about
necessarily in
this?
favor of eliminating the monitors. It's been one of the,
Anything from this?
I know
I think
it's come
just-
up.
Yeah, it's one
I
of
know.
those things we should talk about.
Yeah.
That's all.
At the end.
We're going to take questions at the end before we take a vote, I guess.
Do you want us to go on?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we were going to talk a little bit about the materials that were presented. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Time flies. Last week when we were out here. So we've talked a lot about the retaining walls. When we met, the committee decided to go with the batter wall option along the south wall, and then the straight walls on either side, east and west of the site. And we presented some imagery when we were out on the site of the different block types that are available locally. There's the cobblestone style, the limestone style, and the ledgestone style. The general consensus that we heard when we were on the site before, most people preferred the cobblestone style. I don't think anyone was a big fan of limestone. We can look at the imagery on the next page that shows what that looks like in a big wall.
Cobblestone was also the preference of the design review committee.
Correct, yes.
And the ledgestone was more costly.
So the cobblestone and limestone are about the same cost according to the local manufacturers. The ledgestone is more costly. Colors, for all of them, gray color is standard. The custom colors we talked about in the field is available. They do it in two different ways. One is the field applied stain, which is the less costly of the color options. It's also a little bit less durable. The other option is to do an admix and a hardener, which is added to the formwork during the manufacturing. That's the most costly color option. The manufacturers really don't like to do it because it requires them to stop and do a custom order, and it slows their production time. So they increase their cost as a result of that. So we did share some images of walls with these different systems before. This is the cobblestone system. The limestone, I think what we are not fans of, and I think we heard it from everybody else, is there's a lot of repetition. You can kind of see the same formwork used over and over again, and the blocks are just, turned different orientations, but it looks a little plastic, in my opinion, and manufactured. And then this is the ledgestone. So I don't know how we want to do this, if we want to take sort of this and then go on to the building materials. Do we want to talk about this a little bit first?
Want to talk about this, or it might be an easy one to make a decision on?
Everyone liked cobblestone.
Everyone liked cobblestone. I would personally say we don't want to add cost to it by adding color, so.
Do we need to make a motion, or can we just agree by consent that cobblestone and not adding color?
Everyone? Okay.
If in theory, it was up there and we looked like, oh, that's really bland, I wish we had, stained it pink. Could we do
Yeah.
that, that's something that can be done later
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah.
We'll check
Okay.
that out, but I
Yeah.
think.
Well, they
Oh, they
had,
did say.
they had done that in a
They-
project
they-
where they
Oh,
had
okay.
They had
some
installed it in
issues.
another project, and they went back and stained it.
Okay,
later.
I didn't
All right,
realize that.
so even more.
On the road if you have more. Yeah.
It's not quite
Yeah.
that.
All right, so by
That's
agreement,
simple.
we'll do that.
Could I have a question? If you planted any kind of wisteria or ivy on these walls, would the vines structurally undermine by the vines? I mean, if you wanted to Nebuchadnezzar's hanging gardens,
I don't think so. We can certainly talk to the engineers. I mean, these blocks are, we've got the weight on here.
2,200
Yeah,
pounds.
one of these blocks is 2,310 pounds, so these are,
it's feasible.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
So we've made up one decision tonight.
Excellent.
Do we have to vote?
I
We
think
just
we
by
could just.
consensus.
Okay. And then, materials and colors. So, yeah, the colors look a little
Weird.
strange on the screen there.
Okay.
Yeah, they do, they really do. It's a little rosy.
Yeah, and it's a
Um,
little orange.
We do have the boards over here that,
I brought the boards, I brought all the bricks, I brought everything.
yeah, huh.
It's your new screens, maybe.
These are,
with the
yeah,
Calibration.
they might be a little cranked up a little too high on this.
This one's a little bit, it's a little
Get the idea.
interesting, okay. So that throws us. So we had the two color options that we showed, and some of the brick options. We showed, I think, 3 different options for red brick that we had selected. For those of you who weren't at the last meeting, we said we had met with a masonry representative 3 or 4 times, and she, all told, probably brought out 100 different masonry samples for us to take a look at. We narrowed it down to what you see here. You don't have that lovely painting on the wall anymore of the old
Town hall.
town hall that was our frame of reference for this. But if you remember, we were looking at the old town hall as inspiration and trying to have sort of a subtle difference in the color palettes, and that was what we were looking at when we went to these 2 different masonry colors. And that was sort of what we were thinking about with the darker version here, and then we showed you a more high contrast version. And we've got some brick samples for that here as well. And then we showed you some metal colors, both for this is a little bit hard to see. I'm just gonna skip this one
Yeah,
since
really
it's,
skip it.
yeah. So you get an idea of the entrance here and what we were looking at with the segmental arch here. We're showing some soldier courses for the banding that runs across, connects all these features and across the arch here. You get a sense, again, this was the more subtle sort of color change that took inspiration from the old town hall. This is a little bit more high contrast color. We were showing the limestone base, which we do have samples over there still. I think it's the Adair label on the board. So we showed 1 course of that across the elevation. And then for the metal, for the folding doors, for the metal surrounds around the folding doors, and then the metal highlights on the hose tower, as well as the doors and window openings, we were looking at greens and grays. We have, as well for the standing seam metal roof, we have some grays and sort of gray-brown colors we were looking at for that. But I think you've got the right idea. Standing up and looking at everything in person is good.
Well, I'm trying to, I'm looking at again, the recommendations from design review. One of the things they had indicated was they like the Harbor Collection Irish Gold, which is this one, because it says Irish Gold on it, see? And it says lighter color, lighter contrasting brick, but it doesn't say which one. So I don't know if that's this one or that one. I have no idea which one.
Which are very, and it makes
They're
a
very
big difference
similar.
to be outside.
Yeah.
As you know, getting this terrible light in here, but it is the range.
I gotta look at it too.
Yeah, whereas the subtle browns or.
I guess the question becomes, first of all, do we like the lighter or the darker? Right? Isn't that the first thing? Do we like? What do you mean? Do we like option 1 with the darker, or like option 2 with the lighter bottom? Right? Then when we decide that, then we can look at. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Really?
It really does.
That's something I say made sense, that's nice.
This is, just so you know, that's just like a cap at the back areas for the parapets, you know, that helps all the
Yeah, once we pick the ones, yeah.
That's only the base.
Right, and the preference for that was the,
I think it's, Amy, I think it's this one, the floor.
I'm coming.
Isn't it 5? This one? I can't remember.
it was the rough one.
No, I think it's this one, actually.
I think it's some flashing.
So it's this top one here.
He likes the darker ones.
Yeah, these two. That's just so much flashing.
I think the darker
So is this design reviews recommendation
Well, they
here as
said,
far as we
this
know?
They like
is
the
the
light, they
red.
like more
Yeah.
contrast.
All they said is a lighter
Okay,
bottom, and I don't know which lighter.
okay, yeah.
I'm gonna assume
It could be
this
the
one, 'cause that's
slightly
lighter.
brighter. Well, this one is a
Thank you,
little
Don.
brighter.
Appreciate all the work.
But I think they look up really different outside.
They're very,
time.
they look
Yeah.
very
So,
very similar.
So is this already decided? Is this already decided?
Thank you very much.
oh, thanks, Tom, we'll talk.
We'll let you know if we,
We make any decisions.
by the way.
Do you like the light, dark, or the dark with the dark?
Not my area of expertise.
You like the bottom one?
I don't, between those two, I prefer that one.
So as I said at the meeting, my wife dresses me, so
Yeah,
do not ask me to pick a color. I told her that when I got home, she goes, yeah.
I dress myself, but I'm not allowed to buy clothes,
Same type of thing.
Yeah.
I have
because all I buy are plants.
granimals?
Also, this is actually a more historic brick color than this is.
Oh, yes.
And then don't forget, Diana, you didn't see all the metal. We explained the story about, public bid and zinc. So we
Yeah.
own zinc, actual zinc on.
Actual zinc
We
we
own,
own?
we own like a Rhine zinc on the metal, as a budget item right now.
Okay.
But, we recognize that,
There was a deduct alternate to switch to aluminum composite.
yeah, so like a local one. And so we were explaining to everybody that when you hold up these two, they're both called zinc. That's what you get. So
Right,
that's what
right.
people want to be prepared for. And this is a zinc. So again, there's another zinc.
Well, that would
So-
be
One
my
of the things we
intent.
talked about was custom colors and
Yeah.
how, if you're trying to get the same color for the folding doors, for the metal panel, for the windows, that maybe, the small upcharge for a custom color is worth it to not be
I don't disagree with you.
worrying about that.
So that, and those are both zincs on the, or this is not zinc, but you can see the coloring of these. Like this one. So, and we can get, obviously with these, we can get more continuity between the colors. So,
All right.
okay.
So I'm gonna have to rely on the architects, as I said,
And I'm going to say the same thing.
because and again, I told you what the preference was of design review. That doesn't mean that we go that way, I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware. We asked for their input, it's only fair that we listen.
And looking at it, that's my preference too, but I'm just me.
I like the darker base. I actually, any of the red bricks are fine.
The darker bricks, top and bottom, I mean, with the accent, top and
I think
bottom.
it's gonna age better.
Well, that was, I'll be honest with you, that was very much a concern of mine. I like the lighter, but that was very much a concern, is what is gonna happen with the lighter brick over time.
It's also
Is it
not,
gonna streak, is it gonna, I had some concerns with that.
I mean, historically, people didn't make a lot of brick that color.
The Brits did.
What's your opinion there?
beige color.
Well, if we could go back a little bit before we
Go back.
decide the color. So, remember we talked about the functionality being expressed in the three pieces? And it seems like we've gotten, the unity of the entire building is become secondary. And I think the detailing you're using could help us do that with the color. If you look at these bandings, we have a system of banding at the apparatus bay, and we have one at the administrative wing, and then we have a third type at the tower. But they're not, we don't have this bounding line that connects the whole building together. So I was thinking if we could use this dark brick here, here, and carry it into the tower, it would help reintegrate the tower into the look of the building. Or you could run this banding into the tower to try to bring it together. But we don't have the option of using a horizontal roof line like you have at the building that was hanging on the wall here. The cornice of that Empire, Second Empire building provided that unification. We don't quite have it here. We have three different roof lines, and they're going up and down. And I just got a sense that the tower was getting loose from the rest of the building. And it's the most dominant piece, it's the tallest, and it's the most detailed, but it's also kind of incongruous because the most detailed, largest element is the least important functionally. I mean, the apparatus bay and the administrative are more important components. We have a training tower that's getting all the attention, so that was kind of moving in the wrong direction for me. So I'd like to see if there's any way we could reduce the size and the height of the tower. I know it's certain requirements for the hose length and the
So-
stairs.
It's 50 some odd feet, right, chief?
Our hose lengths are 100 feet, most of them, not all of them. We have some 50-footers. A lot of towers I've seen are 25 feet from the old hose. It doesn't mean we can't do a 100-foot and loop it, right? That's not a big deal. And if it looks better and saves some cost, I guess we could reduce the height, but I don't know.
I mean, I really think the design needs the tower, but if we could bring it down or possibly raise the roof, I'm trying to get a more unified building. And also, we've got this very subtle language that Mark's incorporated of threes. We have three main components. We have three apparatus doors in each bay. We have three in the banding of the soldier course. We have threes in the windows. I would play up to three. People don't have to know it's there, but it will read cohesively, subtly, and they will like the building better. They won't know why, but that's okay. That's what we do, right? We shape it so they like it. So to achieve that unity, I would recommend going with the darker brick, because I think darker color signifies weight. You want it to be down close to the ground. Lighter colors don't do that. And also, we're adding another whole new color system. It's just getting a little too busy for me. Too many colors. I mean, 5 or 6 is plenty. So I'm voting for the brown brick and the red brick.
Could you, for lame people like me that don't know what that means, could you actually point to the brick? Oh, which red brick and which brown brick?
I think we had these two.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And which,
Option one.
what's the name of the brick on top?
This is Hanover. Let's see. It's a Harvest Blend
Okay.
red.
Yeah, so that's the darker of
In the
the
walnut.
options.
I think
Yeah,
that was option one in the
Okay.
handout.
okay.
And it's nice because the brick face has some of that dark tone in it, so they're speaking to each other and it's not just the separate colors.
So that's the top of the pairs,
Yes.
is that selection.
What is the
Agree
base?
to? You're
Yeah.
in the same agreement?
Yes, although I'm curious, what is the bottom, the really light band at the bottom?
That's,
That's this limestone?
It's the
Okay.
foundation
The
probably.
limestone,
Okay.
which we don't.
Yeah, with that, I would 100% do the dark.
It's not
because-
necessary, it doesn't have to be there.
I like
No,
it.
it's a nice, no, I think it's,
It's
I mean, it's
nice.
good for durability too, but
Yeah.
I think that also like, I think if you have that next to one of the lighter bricks at the base, or really anywhere, to me, it's almost like a gray beige sort of competition. So yeah, I do like the dark.
Okay.
I like the darker on the bottom, but I'm not sure about the red on top.
You're not sure about the red brick color itself?
Correct, yeah, which of the reds?
Which of the
I like the darker,
You like the darker
the
banding?
darker base, the brown, yeah,
Okay.
so that's that one.
The eye chart, Mitch.
Vanna.
So the one in your right hand has a little bit of brown.
Yeah, yeah,
That
I
middle
see.
stripe.
It's a little bit
Yep.
of a purple.
Seeing them together, I agree. Yeah, I think if we were gonna go with the darker base, the slightly darker red does make more sense. I like the darker brown base, so I think I'm backing into that.
Okay, now to mess you up even more.
Traditional.
These are so very similar.
They're very
It's
similar.
so
She had it
hard
with
to
us last
tell
time, we
in
forgot.
this light.
But the one on the left has more gray in it. So I would stick to the
One on
brownish.
your left.
One on my left.
Where your
Yeah.
hand is.
Yeah,
You like the one that has more brown in it?
Well, the other two, either of the other two have more brown than the one on the far left.
put this
Go
one
off the
down.
rails.
Sure.
These are warm. Either one.
I'm willing to go with,
It is hard inside.
Yeah, I'm not, I won't die on the hill for either of the red brick. Either one's fine.
Autumn blend, okay.
So the autumn blend in that one there? The harvest.
Well, you keep saying either one. This is,
Which are the top ones? The one
The
on the right?
harvest.
That one there.
The one on the right, what is that one called?
That one?
it's Bowerston brick, it's Harbor Blend, I'm sorry, Harbor Collection Harvest Blend Modular.
Now, keep in mind, as we have been saying all along, we can pick this all we want. It's a municipal project, which means it gets bid, which means someone may say, this is as close as I can get to it, and that's what it ends up being. So that's very important to keep that in mind. And for the citizens to understand, we may say, this is the exact brick we want. We may not get that exact
You
brick.
can specify 3 specifics, right?
So, Yeah, that will be our next step. Once you select which one is your preferred, we'll go back to the masonry reps and have them find equals that we can specify. But it could be, it doesn't mean we'll get one of those equals. It
Right.
could be we're presented with something else, so.
We'll have a
try
basis
to-
of design, we'll name it in
Yeah.
the spec, we'll name it.
But also, if it's too far off of what the design intent is, they
Right.
can reject the submittal.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
Now, to me, to be honest with you, those were the easy ones. Those things there,
The metal.
the metal,
the metal. Because we not only have to look at the color, we have to look at the material itself. Because there's zinc, right, there's a couple different
There's
material
zinc, and
options.
then there's aluminum, Lucabond product, so we just,
Again, I
and
don't know.
Paclad and.
by agreement, are we all okay with the
So we
recommendation?
have to choose the window color?
Well, hang on, before, is everyone okay with the dark bottom we picked and the red we picked?
Let's name, somebody name them so they go into the minutes.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, and can you
So-
name it?
I
Ken?
think
Yeah, the dark one and the dark, yeah, I'm with you, Mitch.
Make sure.
we definitely eliminated one of the darks. Everyone felt this one was too cool, correct? This one is too cool.
Yep, too great.
Okay.
We turn them around when we're done with
Yep.
them, so that they don't get mixed.
Yeah, those are no.
Turn it.
These are so very similar. I think really,
We
it's
didn't
more
like the
of
light
a,
red, right? That's no.
it was
I kind of like the light red, but I'm okay, yeah.
there's a textural difference
I'm the only-
between
I'm the
these
only
two.
one.
Even if you don't see the color difference, there is a textural difference.
Yeah.
that's true. I like the texture.
Bring them around so you can see. This one is definitely smoother. This one's got a little more texture to it.
So the smooth is more what you see in a Victorian building, almost, there are no little fissures in it. It's just very uniform.
Does that mean you prefer that or not?
Do we have to pick the grout as well?
We will have to pick the grout. We don't have to do that tonight.
Okay.
Neil asked me, and, we're thinking it's gonna be, the gray and traditional, not color matched as opposed to a color match. We're not planning on color matching, but we'd have to look at that.
Colors extra in the mortar?
Pardon me?
Is colors extra in the mortar?
I don't, I'm sorry, color extra in the mortar, I mean, I don't
think so.
If you
It's like
tinted the
Betty's.
mortar?
It would be a small.
Small, okay.
Yes. And it's sort of more traditional.
So do we
to
pick
have
which
the-
ones you're
the
going with?
gray, the
Well, we like the
colored
ones
one.
that have more texture.
Okay.
I don't know.
The
I don't
one
know
on
what
the
those,
left?
that side of the room likes.
What's that name?
More
Walnut?
texture.
It's a walnut.
Walnut?
The one with more texture and the red that we picked.
Okay, so it's palmetto brick, the color is walnut, and, I already told you this. The Bowerston, the Harvest Bun Modular, so this is what we're.
Okay, by agreement, we've made another decision.
Except for the
Metal,
greens.
Mimi, why don't you just stay and describe metal
Tell me
while you're
anything
there?
about that. I don't know.
Do the windows, yeah.
You did the best job of describing
Did
it.
you look at those, Diane?
I did. I mean, I lean towards the darker ones, but I'm not beyond that, I think.
So let's look at material first.
Yeah, let's have a recommendation on material.
So just so everybody knows, there's metal at the doors, there's metal at the tower,
Right.
there's metal windows, and right now we own a standing seam roof.
Yes.
So those are 4 elements that we're dealing with. Now, we may not have a standing seam roof at the end of the night, but we still have those 4 elements that we're still, because you guys voted on a standing seam roof. But then the cost conversation is yet to happen, we'll put it like that, so.
And just,
Yeah.
so the base cost estimate that we did had zinc as the metal. And then we asked him to price an alternate for using an aluminum composite metal panel instead of the zinc. And that would be a deduct, so a savings of $49,430 was his estimate for that change.
It's not a ton of metal.
Not a ton.
Which makes it a little bit more expensive, but not that much in the overall picture of the project,
Will you speak to the maintenance of each
That's what I was gonna
material?
ask, which is gonna hold up better.
I
Don't
know.
everybody speak
I
at
mean,
once.
Why,
I don't think
why
any
is
of
one
these
more
these
expensive than the
projects
other? What's the value of it?
Aluminum's a little, I mean, it's just generally a little less expensive product than the zinc. I think they're both very durable products. I mean, metal lasts a long time.
How are they gonna age?
So
one
the
age
zinc
better than the
will
other?
patina a little bit. The aluminum has a painted finish, so the painted finish will fade over time. But I think it has we looked at 30-year warranty on the finish or something, so it's a long-term warranty.
Given those 2 options, I say we go with the less. What do you want?
I'm just gonna say, so, looking it up, zinc is known for its high strength and impact resistance, while aluminum is known for its lightweight and excellent thermal conductivity. So there's your difference. The one's stronger than the other, basically.
I'd rather have patina than fading.
Yeah.
That's zinc.
So the other thing to consider is matching the zinc color for the doors and the windows. You're not going to match that same color and texture that has a bit of a, I don't know if you want to, you can do your Vanna White now.
Whole pieces of,
So you're saying zinc everywhere or aluminum everywhere?
Well, no, I'm saying that if you do the zinc for the panels, so this would be the zinc
Yeah.
product,
Column covers.
the covers here.
Yep.
But these doors are still going to be a painted
Oh, okay.
metal. And so it's not going to be exactly the same. We could come up with a paint that would be close,
if
but
you-
it's not going to have that
But if you
texture.
did aluminum, it would be the same.
It would be, yeah.
Could you not get the window manufacturer to match the zinc color?
Sure.
I think they could match the color, but not the
texture,
grain and
right.
texture. Yeah, it would be, so it would look different. And you'd be matching, you'd be having a paint that's not going to patina next to metal that is going to patina.
So you'd recommend the aluminum to keep a match?
Yeah.
I would think, I'd like to see the windows, doors, and the panels all match.
Yeah.
And age together.
And cost-wise, the aluminum's cheaper.
Yeah.
Decision?
Aluminum?
Aluminum.
Okay. So then we do color?
Now we gotta do color?
Now we got to do color?
Man. Green.
I know.
Okay, so let's take you got all the zinc.
Yeah,
These,
we got
well, let's take these out too, because those are zinc. These are zinc aluminum.
These are, well, they're, yeah,
There's zinc one of
Oh,
these.
there we
yeah, they're aluminum, yeah.
But they're supposed to be like zinc.
go. Okay, so we're down to these. And so some of these have a bit of a metallic finish. It's harder to match if we're talking about picking a color and then having some manufacturers be custom. It's not impossible, but it's just a little bit tougher with the metallic, so that's something to think about. So these were all the windows. So we've got some greens and we've got some gray, gray-brown colors.
Yeah, put the greens on top of the red brick. See how that,
Oh, God, this light in here is just.
It's really tough. And I don't know that we need to pick the exact green. I mean, I would rather do that outside, but maybe we
Yeah.
could have a direction, whether it's green or,
Yeah, like green or gray, and then we can like get outside and, I
Right.
mean, everybody should see it outside. I mean, you guys that saw it outside know the difference.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big,
it's demonstrable.
it is.
we never have quite enough room to get them all.
Green.
I like the green too.
green,
I do.
one of the greens?
Yeah.
So you can eliminate the brown ones.
So let's just look at them next to this, too, 'cause they will touch this as well.
I like the green better.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
like the green better.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
So, I agree with the greens.
Do we have to select one of those three?
I'm not sure we have to, but if you have one that you don't like, it's too bright, or one that's too dark, you know, you could bring that up right now.
I would say keep the two to the right. Can you tell those?
You can see from here, Tom, yeah.
They look almost the same.
The one on the far left is
Too
darker.
dark. Too dark, yeah.
That's close enough.
Those two are pretty darn
They're
close.
pretty close.
look like a
The
big
other
square
thing
to
is the
me.
roof.
The roof.
I'm not particularly fond personally of green roofs, but, you know, if it is metal, I think you could do the roof as a different color, like a gray, personally.
But I don't think we're gonna have it at the end of the evening.
What?
I don't know that we'll have it at the end of the evening.
I don't know, but we should bring it up, because we have been
That's fair.
showing it as,
Yep.
you know, as more gray, but not green. But
Yeah.
yeah, we were showing us like a slate gray.
a slate gray,
Yeah.
and so that's my preference
Wanna
for
lean
any
towards
of these
gray,
cases.
Whatever color roof we go, whatever type of roof we go.
Yeah, you could do a grayish green and then sort of
Okay.
talks to
Okay.
All right. Whatever.
Flying.
Okay. Okay, so one other thing we wanted to talk to you about was a comment that we got from the Design Review Committee about the sidewalk in front of the new station. So the design, or first we should say the ZBA results last night. We did, the setback variance was approved, the building sign size variance was approved. They did not approve the electronic message board. So that was the one unfortunate thing. We can still build the sign, we can bring electric provisions out there so that if something changes in the future, you have the opportunity to put the electronic message board up there.
I
But
would like to speak to that, though. What I don't want to do, I'm going to be very honest, is put a manual sign where you put letters
Oh,
up there.
yeah.
I have no interest in that. It won't be kept up. It'll look like crap, and when it blows, we'll end up with God knows what spelling out there, so.
Or if somebody changes the letters.
Just saying.
Yeah,
Don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's an option.
Yep. I completely agree.
okay.
But we can, as Amy said, prepare it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
If
to
you
prepare
change
it.
your ordinance or decide to pursue it in another direction, we'd have the power there to add it.
So you'd have, let me use the word plug in there for lack of a better description.
Conduit.
We bring in power, we bring it up through something, and it would sit there and it'd be accessible. We'd
Okay.
note where it is, and they could knock something out. Maybe it's a box that we knock out. I
There
don't know.
would,
We
there
have to
would be
think about it.
power going out in that direction anyway for lighting the sign, so.
Yeah, so it's not a big deal. And so if you change your mind, and we'll even go so far as to think about how we construct the sign, so if it's, you know, we know that you clip it on the sides or hang it, we'll kind of try to see if we can plan, so you're not like deconstructing the structure of the sign.
I
in
wouldn't want the
final.
sign to look like it was missing something. If
Right.
we build the sign, I don't want to build it like it looks like it's missing
Yes,
something.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
What is the value of having the sign without the LED?
The sites, most buildings have a.
It says Northborough Fire Station, and it has the address on it, so it's a building
The address, which, so
identification.
you could find it in the case of a fire.
I require everyone else to put a
Yeah.
911 address out there. I
Yeah.
can't very well say,
Yeah.
except for us.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, we're gonna have a very large sign on the building itself, but
It
not
doesn't
the
have the
address.
number,
What I wonder about is, without the LED sign, what is the value of constructing the rest of the sign?
I don't think it has to be the whole brick thing anymore, do you?
We still have to support the frame of it, get it up above the ground that is not in the snow. And then the question becomes, are you gonna build it out of another material that isn't represented anywhere else in the town? I mean, on the building, so, you know, the site sign design, you know, conceptually matches the same brick, the same contrast.
But you're not looking at it has to be as big or anything like that.
Well, again, it really depends on what we're looking for the future. I think the options are, we leave it like it is, or we don't put it in.
Question, what
we
were the
don't put it anyway,
ZBA's
put it in
rationale
other buildings.
for denying that?
The business district doesn't allow it, and I think, you're not gonna quote me exactly, but essentially, the business district doesn't allow it, and the reason they put it in was so they didn't have a series of lighted, flashing displays up and down through the business district. And so they felt that that was, you know, what you were trying to do.
Some people were concerned that it was going to be distracting for drivers. And they kept talking about the three-prong test for why they would be allowed to grant a variance, which I'm not going to be able to quote what the three prongs are.
They couldn't even
right now.
quote it. They all, you know,
But,
use, size of the soil,
Soil.
Yeah.
topography,
It's-
and something.
Yeah, it's a use variance.
It's a use
Which I did
variance,
not
right.
realize that we would need a use variance for that sign. Use variances are somewhat of a hot potato
Right.
in Northborough right now, which unfortunately we just fell into.
Yeah.
And the majority of them did not feel that it met the.
2 out of 3.
Yes, the
2
strict
voted
rules.
for it, 3 voted against.
Yeah.
And one person, the third person who was there, also voted for it, but they were an alternate.
It was an alternate,
Right.
yeah.
So they
And-
didn't
and-
fall in your favor.
And I think it needs a supermajority
Yeah,
to do that anyway. It would need 4 out of 5, and it only got 2 out of 5.
yeah, so it failed.
Yeah, so it failed, and that's it.
Yeah.
There might be other ways down the road of addressing that. One way down the road of addressing it is we could amend our zoning bylaws that say that there's a municipal exclusion to the LED sign, as long as it's not animated. From my perspective, it's the animation that I really despise. That's not gonna happen right now, and it might not happen forever. I think there is good value in the community having an LED sign for this purpose that we've talked about in the downtown area. I thought it was a good idea to have it here, because we're building something here right now. We don't have a lot of other downtown spots where we could put a sign like that.
And
But I-
the line sign doesn't work.
Right.
They don't have the money to fix it.
Yeah,
It's not
and
gonna
it's,
get
and it's not under the town's management.
Not under our management.
Another possibility is, when we revitalize Blake Street, which is not this project, maybe we take over that location and put up a town-owned sign. I think there should be a town-owned and town-managed sign to do that, and that's beyond the scope of what we do here. My interest is, I wanna have conduit and everything in place, so that if, when the town resolves this issue of, can we put up a sign downtown, we at least have this as an option. And if we don't build the whole sign the way we want to, the way we wanted to in the designs, we would obviously have record of everything that was built there, so that hopefully whoever makes that decision down the road would be smart enough to say, let's use the same materials, so it
We
looks
don't need to
right.
make a signed decision tonight, do we?
No, we don't.
No.
Okay,
We do
good.
not. We're just reporting about a committee that we're done with.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what did you want to cover next?
We want,
Sidewalk.
The sidewalk. So the Design Review Committee made some comments on the sidewalk in front of the building. So I'm going to blow this up. There we go. So we set the sidewalk back from the street, you can see here, because that's what's called for in the Design Review Guidelines, which we're showing right here. The Design Review Guidelines call for having a buffer from the traffic on the street, having a green strip between the street traffic and the sidewalk. Right now, as you can see in front of the bank, the sidewalk is right up against the street, and right now, across your site, as it is now, the sidewalk continues right up against the street. When you get over to your abutter on this side, the Hillside Grill, the sidewalk is set back quite a ways. The comment that they made was, and let me jump out here because I've got some pictures of what's going on at the Hillside Grill. So this is at the property line between your site and the Hillside Grill, and you can see where the existing sidewalk is on your site and the existing sidewalk over on the Hillside Grill. And then this is the entry drive to the Hillside Grill. The sidewalk at the Hillside Grill comes up this hill and it turns around the corner and it goes back into the parking lot for the Hillside Grill. It does not continue across the drive aisle here. And the same thing happens to the sidewalk over here in front of this other building. It wraps back into the parking lot and then comes across the site, and then it terminates here, and there doesn't appear to be any other sidewalk going down the street. So the Design Review Committee was concerned about someone coming from the downtown area, coming down the sidewalk in a wheelchair, with a baby carriage, whatever, that if we make the connection that we were showing here, that they were going to go up to in front of the Hillside Grill, and there would be no way for them to continue beyond that. So they were suggesting that we that we ask for a waiver for the green space requirement in front of the property, and that we move the sidewalk right up against the street. And Par did a little sketch here. The pink shows what it would look like if we moved the sidewalk right up against the street. I think what we are struggling with is, I don't think there's a good solution here. At one point, the Design Review Committee had suggested perhaps continuing the sidewalk down the street. I think they then said, we recognize that's not part of your project. If we continue the sidewalk down the street in front of the Hillside Grill, there are catch basins in that space where a sidewalk would be up against the street. I think there's a sewer manhole there, so there would be some utilities that would need to be moved. And because of the way it's currently graded, you would have to retain some way or regrade something of the hill there. I don't know exactly what would be involved, but it's not as simple as just putting a sidewalk down the street there. So if we keep it the way we have it now, we connect the dots to our neighboring property, but you get to a point where you really can't continue walking. If you do what's shown here in the pink sketch, then you have these two sidewalks basically that are going to go to nowhere. Your sidewalk's going to go to nowhere, their sidewalk's going to go to nowhere, and it's going to kind of look like a miss, I think. I asked Par, is there some sort of compromise solution here? Is there a way to do what we intended, to adhere to the Design Review Guidelines, to pull the sidewalk back, have that green space, and then make the connection to the Hillside Grill, but maybe is there a way to have a Y connection or something that could branch out to another sidewalk in the future? Or even if we don't do that now, is there anything that could be done? They said the grades are kind of tricky there, and it would be tough to do. The other thing I just want to make clear is that some of the feedback we heard from the Design Review Committee was concerned that because of the sidewalk grading over at Hillside Grill, that something might not be handicap accessible. And we just want to go on the record and say that everything we are doing on our site is handicap accessible. We don't have any control over what was done on the neighboring property, but the grading that we intend to do to connect to their sidewalk would be handicap accessible. I don't know what happens beyond that in terms of the slope and handicap accessibility.
Amy, that looks like a considerable slope as you go west towards Hillside.
We would have to grade up, I can't blow it up anymore, but you can see some red lines here.
Could you put the picture up, please?
Sure.
Yeah, there.
right there. Yep. So we are grading up a little bit to meet that sidewalk.
And where does
Get that
our
figure.
property end? Is it at the tree or past
I think it's closer to that shrub.
Trying to look over here.
got this.
Yeah. It's hard to tell, but I think you're right. It's somewhere
But
right
I
around
thought
there.
the Architectural Access Board requirements allowed you to follow the natural contours of the site, and if it exceeded 1 in 12 or 1 in 20, you didn't have to change your site conditions.
Yeah.
Sidewalks do not have to be handicap accessible.
Right, I think, well, and as I say, we can make it handicap accessible on
On
our
our site,
site.
right.
We just can't deal with what's going on over at Hillside Grill. And I think we would certainly advocate, I agree with you, that they do say that if the topography prevents you from making it handicap accessible, you don't necessarily have to make the sidewalk. But if you can, I think you should try to. And we would certainly do that on your site. It's just when you get beyond, you have a problem.
So Hillside, for some context, was built in contradiction to what was required in design review and planning requirements. So we had to stop work. This guy did all kinds of things contrary to what was permitted and allowed. So these sidewalks are in violation to begin with. So I don't encourage us to connect up to something that's not conforming.
Okay.
So the question becomes, do we, I mean, Amy was out there walking the site and looking and saying, you can see which, it feels logical to follow the pathway that everybody else, which is wrong,
Right.
but the design guidelines it's safer. Pulling you back off the road, feels safer to me, because if you have a parking strip there, there feels some buffer to the road, but when you're just standing on the edge there, the cars are moving. So,
Got the bend of the
we
road.
get it, it's a complicated decision for you to make, but,
I say
here's
keep
where
it
we
simple.
are.
Whatever you do, keep it simple.
So, I mean, we're more than willing to do whatever you want. Let's put it
Yeah,
that
I don't
way.
think there's a real right or wrong
Right or
answer
wrong.
here.
Does the
It-
state have any requirements where it's a state road and where it's a state
I
sidewalk
don't
or
think so.
anything?
As
As far as that buffer, the grass buffer,
I don't think so. Mass DOT will definitely be looking at all of this, so they will let us know if they have
and
any
if it were in
comments.
fact grass, then the DPW would have to mow that little spot too and keep it up.
Captain, I do recall asking Scott Charpentier this, but the state DOT is curb to curb. That's their responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that sidewalk. I am glad to hear what I always suspected, that they broke all sorts of rules. That sidewalk doesn't make any sense. But I kind of say that's kind of where it is now. And if you said there are drainage things where the sidewalk should be, and obviously there's a little bit of a hill there,
Oh, yeah.
I don't see them ever fixing that.
You can see,
So I
see one
kind
right
of,
there.
yeah, I kind of lean towards, let's try to make it feasible to connect the two. We won't be doing the work that needs to be done across the property line, but we should do it in such a way that it can be continued, because that's where the sidewalk is. And it sounds like we have a good working relationship with them now, talking about removing some of the wall and some other stuff. Maybe we can convince them through that dialogue, they're not gonna redo the sidewalk in the right place, because now, the way that site is built, it's a big project. Maybe we could convince them to just cut it across, so you could at least walk directly across at the higher elevation. It's kind of in a weird spot because it's on the ramp. It's more in the driveway than you'd want a sidewalk to be. But right now, you have to walk around the building, through the parking lot, down to the other building, and then come back down again. And if somebody's going to walk down Main Street, and especially if something ever happens on the other, if there's ever a sidewalk on that side, I'd rather have it be as close to the right place as possible. So so my long way of saying, it would be nice if we could ramp it up that way as it exits our site, so that it can more easily connect there, so that the pedestrian who isn't thinking about this project was built right and this project was built wrong. They're just, I want to go get a sandwich.
The only other thing to consider is if we do meet the design review guidelines as they were written, and we set it back, we put that strip there,
Yeah.
there's a jog at the other end as well.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
You just need to keep, there's a
Yeah.
jog, there'll be a
No, I
jog at
think-
the other end,
I-
so.
But there's pavement.
There is a jog here, you can
Yeah.
see in front of the bank, it's right up against the street, and then we are angling back
Yeah.
to meet the
I'm-
design review
honestly, I'm more
guidelines.
thinking about, I mean, Avidia is, at least has a sidewalk in a reasonable place.
Yes.
Match that one.
And it's
The-
comparably
The problem,
flat.
the problem is the other side, is the
If we
is the
match that
hillside
one, we go
problem.
straight down along the road.
Yeah, just go down the side of the road, and then as it, maybe as it exits our public driveway, have it arc up if it can be done, you know,
I think PAR was recommending against doing that, and I can't remember why. Do you remember why they said that? I don't remember if it was Mass DOT concern with having the angled crosswalks across the curb cuts, but they were recommending doing one or the other and not trying to,
or, I mean, we've got the.
which is why they angled here rather than coming straight across and then,
Yeah, I mean, the.
yeah.
It's also safer for someone walking across the driveway to set them back a little
Yeah,
bit.
okay.
And I would
Yeah.
say the PAR is actually the experts, so
Yeah,
why don't
yes.
we defer to their decision?
I think they had that one comment that they wouldn't try to make up the difference across a curb cut, but whether you put the sidewalk out at the street or you bring it in, they don't have an opinion. As they said, they were just trying to follow the design review guidelines to bring it in.
Bringing it in, would that be easier than to connect to the hillside side? Because it
Well,
was
no, we were,
extended?
so we were bringing it in and we were connecting to the existing hillside.
Okay.
So that's what happens when you bring it in. What
Yeah.
design review is suggesting is
design
that we
review said
don't
push
bring
it
it in,
back.
to push it out. And so there would be no connection at Hillside anymore. You'd have these two sidewalks that just sort of miss each other.
And I apologize if you said so. What was design review's rationale for having it closer to the road rather than inside?
Because they think that where Hillside has it right now,
Yeah,
it's not continuous. It's may or may not be handicap accessible, we don't really know.
Yeah.
But certainly when you get to the driveway at Hillside, it does not appear to be handicap accessible to get down there. And in the future, they would like to see this sidewalk continue at the street and sort of correct the problem at Hillside.
okay.
Their statement was, due to the fact that there aren't any grass buffers between the road and the sidewalk on West Main Street and that portion of downtown, committee would recommend a waiver to allow a straight continuous sidewalk that connects with the sidewalk at Avidia Bank and ends at the west side of our property.
I don't have a very strong preference either way. There's no perfect way to do it.
There is no perfect.
There's no
That's
perfect
really
way.
cool.
Keep it simple. My opinion.
Yeah, I don't know which
keep
is,
it
I don't know
simple.
which
I
is
would-
simpler,
To be honest with you,
right?
I would go with design review's request.
And just dead end it at the hillside.
Go with design, and then we deal with that.
That end at the catch basin.
Yes.
And then we deal with
At
that the
that
same way we
shrub.
talked about dealing with parking further up. That's a different project at a different time.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I still think that it is better for pedestrians. It's not our Hillside isn't our problem, but that's there. I think we need to plan a way of interconnecting with that sidewalk. I don't think we should avoid it, because then we're dead-ending in front of the fire station. Like,
I
why,
can tell you that design review was dead set against it,
against looping it up?
against connecting those two sidewalks. They didn't want it, it was dangerous, it's too steep, it goes to nowhere. So that's why I'm that's what they said, I mean, they don't want it. So they were much more favor of just a straight sidewalk, connect straight to by the bank, and dead end it at the end of our property. They thought there was all kinds of, they were concerned, and
Yeah. No, I wish, and I keep calling it Hillside. The Hillside is just a tenant, and it happens to be a restaurant I like, but we call it the Hillside property. I wish whoever built that had done it right.
Jimmy the Greek,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy Viatzis.
All right,
Right.
I would agree with the chief, go with design review because
Okay,
I'll do it. Good. Ask for a waiver.
okay. Budget discussion, is that where we're at?
We are, okay. So, just wanted, this is a slide that you saw before that we just wanted to talk about how we developed our total project costs again. Just to remind everyone that the project costs are made up of the hard construction costs, which are the building and site. And those are the numbers that you saw in the TCI construction cost estimate package that you all have. Those were developed with drawings and specifications and engineering narratives that were provided by our team, our design team. Were schematic in level. They're not fully complete. They were appropriate for the level of design that we were at. And so they include a design and pricing contingency of 10% to allow for all the unknowns that we can't foresee at this point until we do more design. You had 14 alternate options and one allowance order of magnitude, which was for the antenna connection at the water tower, which the committee decided not to pursue the future. And then the other piece of the total project costs are the soft costs, which are project costs that are outside the scope of a contractor. Those are furnishings, fixtures, equipment, loose furnishings, program-related data, teledata, AV equipment, other specialty items, fees and expenses, so architectural engineering fees, OPM fees, commissioning, legal, utility fees for utility back charges for connections, and then materials testing during construction. And then there's a contingency, both a construction and owner's project contingency for any unknowns that happen during construction or for the overall project. Right now, we are in design development. We are moving forward towards a next cost estimate at the end of design development. It's going to be based on more advanced drawings, more detailing, and a tighter definition of the scope of work, again, just by the nature of where we'll be in the project at that point. And at that point in time, we recommend doing a reconciliation project. So TCI would do a construction cost estimate. Colliers would have an estimator do a construction cost estimate. They would get in a room together and they would compare their estimates. They'd discuss where the differences are and they'd try to come to some understanding. So you'd have the confidence of two professional cost estimators at that point, looking at the numbers together and coming up with an agreement on what the overall construction cost would be. So, you know, the process that we went through, I think, we just want to remind everyone, we had the initial conversation at the beginning of the project. There are different routes that owners can take when we talk about developing a project. And one is that we figure out what the program is. We do programming, we figure out the current and the future needs, and we then design around that, and we figure out what that project is going to cost. The other is that sometimes towns come in and they say, we have a predetermined budget, we cannot spend more than X number of dollars. And then we say, okay, if that's the case, then you can only afford a building of this size, and we'll design according to that. And that's not the route we took here. So we just want to remind everyone that that's not the route, that we did the programming, we looked at what the current and future needs were. We did site planning that was based on that program and the operations of the fire department. We had lots of conversations with the fire department about what would work for them. And we always talked both about in the site planning and in the building planning that operations were always first and foremost in the design, that we need to make sure that we moved the fire apparatus onto the site and away from the site in the safest manner, and that gave the greatest ease to meet response times, and that the firefighters, when they were on the site and in the building, that they had easy and quick movement and that they had safety. We wanted to make sure the administration spaces were designed to provide oversight and interaction with the community. Living quarters were going to be provided that would be appropriate for 24/7 occupancy. I think everyone needs to remember that the firefighters live in this building when they're on their shift. And they're there for long periods of time, and that the MEP, FP space requirements support modern systems that Dom talked about. Those have space requirements for any of those systems. And then the other really important thing that we always heard from the beginning was that this fire station building was going to be a gateway to this revitalized downtown district, and that you really wanted a traditional aesthetic that could be this showcase building for the downtown. So, you know, as we're talking now, we asked the chief to reach out to all of you and let us know what your budget concerns could be so that we'd be prepared for this meeting when we came in. And we heard lots of different comments, and they were sort of all over the board where people were going. So we wanted to just lay the groundwork here and remind you how we got to the point that we're in right now. And if we are now talking about there's a predetermined budget, we need to talk about how we're going to proceed and what you want us to do exactly. And are we going to do this in a way that the fire department operations are going to be affected, or are there going to be other decisions? Because if you're talking about you need to cut, and I'm going to just throw a wild number out there, you need to cut 10% from the project. The only way to do that is to really slash square footage. And so that's going to have an effect on the fire department. And we just want everyone to go into that with their eyes wide open. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the decisions then. What does that mean if we're going to start cutting like this? And I think we need to remind everyone again that time is really important because the costs just continue to climb. We talked about escalation a lot with you guys and what that means. If we're talking about serious value engineering, you know, there is this clock that's ticking, but this is the time to put the brakes on if we're going to do it and to make changes before the design development phase goes much further than it is right now. If you really want to make a lot of serious cuts, we'd need to pause the architectural and engineering work to figure that out, and then we need to sort of remobilize once we figured out what the revised scope was. We've heard a lot of comments about the site costs being high. They are high, they definitely are high, but the site is complicated. It's definitely complicated. We've got these retaining walls, we've got a lot of earthwork that needs to move around to make them work. We've got stormwater management, and there's going to be export of surplus material to make all of that work. We can ask what, if anything, we can do to bring those costs down, but again, that's going to have an impact on the layout of the site if we're really going to bring that down. Exterior materials, we can talk about different materials. We can talk about the design, what the decorative elements are, and the trim, and the roof shape, and all, and the door and window openings. But what happens if that building looks different as a result of all of that? Again, with the initial decision that this was going to be a gateway building, and it was really going to set the tone for the downtown, what does that mean if we start cutting some of these materials? And we've talked a lot with Dom, and I know you're thinking about what you heard from the life cycle cost, but you know, the balancing the simplest systems that are available to meet code versus something that might, over the long term, give you savings from a life cycle cost perspective and operation of the building. And the next point talks to that. You know, are we talking about first costs, or are we talking about long-term costs? Not just in terms of the HVAC systems and whether or not you add solar, but maintenance costs and replacement costs for other systems in the building. We talked previously about the standing seam metal roof versus the asphalt shingle roof and the lifespan of it, and whether or not the town would have to face re-shingling an asphalt shingle roof before. And that was something the committee talked about, and we can revisit it, but you need to think about what's most important to the citizens' first cost versus long-term. And how sustainable does the town want to be? Do you want to invest now in these systems with the hope of achieving some of these rebates and all, and having savings over the life of the building because you've chosen sustainable systems and you've decided to be a good steward of the environment and set an example for the other people in Northborough, or is first cost really the driving factor of it? So we wanted to kind of put all that out on the table for things to think about in the decision process as we talk more about the budget. And I know Todd has some budget stuff to talk about as well.
So you don't have this for the screen, right?
No,
Okay.
no, we don't have it.
You all have in front of you the project budget development high-low cost range. So we have from a month ago, on the left side of this worksheet, is what was put together immediately following the release of the cost estimate that came out. Since then, we've had some time to go through that estimate, and the board has had an opportunity to cut some things out of that estimate or made some decisions as it relates to the design of the building. So you now have on the right side a more, we'll call it a tightened up version of the budget. So the important thing is Square footage has not changed, and the dollar per square foot has not changed. We're still looking at a 30,000 square foot building, unless that is going to be changed at some point. We are still looking at a new building construction cost of 30.9 million. There are some deductions that can be included here, like the EV charging stations. The way that we look at that is you can do all of the charging stations for the 128,000, or you can do none of the charging stations. We don't know what's going to be required by code at the moment. We think it's none. But, well, I shouldn't say that. In the base cost in the estimate is to get the charging stations infrastructure in place. We already own that. If we choose to put the stations and their hardware on that, that is your $128,000.
If we did 11.
If you did 11.
Yeah.
Yep. So it could fall, we could do 6 of them, and it could be around 60,000.
And there's a $50,000 grant that we would
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
if we
Try to
did,
go
if
for
we
it.
did them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So at the very least, the infrastructure is in place to get it to the stations. We have the retaining wall, which was a decision made in recent weeks to go with the battered version. That has now given us an accurate cost of $296,000. As you saw on the left, we had upwards of 800,000, or I guess the straight wall version was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 300. The water tower data communications, that was something that was brought up early on in the process. It was since determined to be eliminated from the project, which is a savings of anywhere between $400,000 and $900,000.
Can I ask you a question? I skipped over the miscellaneous site improvements. I know that's not highlighted, but those carried numbers in the earlier figure, and now they've been zeroed out.
Yeah, so when we put this together
Yeah, that's
last month,
Wanted to get
we
that
did
on
not realize that those were in that estimate, or were going to be in that estimate till it came out. It now is in the construction estimate, so it's a cost savings through the worksheet, I guess we'll call it. So that brings our our total site construction down to anywhere between $296,000 and $425 and change. I'll say, we'll say this. The site work is a big piece of this project. It is roughly 19.5% of the total cost of the project is to put this building on that particular site. Not a lot of that can be changed. It is what it is, but it is important to know that that's what it takes to put this building where you want it. We have the geothermal wells. We now have some rough idea prices from Dom that we didn't have earlier, so these will change a little bit, but what was it? Option 1 was in the base, technically.
Yeah, yes.
Was the base contract, right? Okay. And then the geothermal, we had estimated it around 2.2 million. With some rebates, that changes too, so. Let's see, so that brings our current subtotal for construction to anywhere between 31.6 million to 35.1 million.
And that includes the geothermal
Those include the geothermal.
35
in
includes
both
the
cases.
geothermal.
Yep.
In both cases, so.
Another piece I don't want to skip over is the escalation. The escalation, we anticipated prior to that estimate, or with that estimate, we didn't realize that it was included in the construction cost estimator, did take into account. Important to note that what he took into account is this gets you to about bid date, so we're talking fall of this year.
But that's a savings on paper, not by
Yeah,
decision.
exactly,
Savings on paper
exactly
of
right.
800 to almost $1 million.
Yep. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment has not changed. There's too many unknowns. This is just an estimate based on past projects, other fire stations. That'll all change as we get some of that.
What was the specialty signage? Last line item there?
It's not like men and women's
Especially signage
restrooms and.
in the furnishings.
Yeah.
So that's not the outside?
No,
No.
that's in our base.
Okay, thank you.
And then we get into the fees and expenses. We have now tidied up these fees as well. If you see on the left side, the architect's fees, that was based on a percentage of the estimated construction cost. That's now sort of tidied up a little bit better. We now have an idea of what it will take, and that $2.5 to $2.9 million number for the architect includes the construction phase of the project. So you can slide all the way down to the next highlighted area, which is the OPM fees. Same thing. That $1 million on the left was based on what we anticipated based on construction costs. This is now the actual cost of the OPM fees based on contract that's been already submitted to town. Building commissioning, that comes down as well now that we've given it some thought. We've looked at the building itself. It doesn't we don't anticipate that there will be too much building commissioning involvement, so that cost can come down a little bit, as well as the owner's cost estimator. It's not a,
What is the owner's cost estimator? Because
Same-
That's the
thing.
independent
Okay,
person that we
so
would
we-
do, that we were talking about.
Okay,
So we do a cost estimate with
Right.
TCI through our contract,
Yep.
but then you have them do a cost estimate.
Okay.
The numbers come in a little bit different. The two of them get in a room together, they talk it
Yep.
through, and they try to reconcile it and get to some agreement on what the cost will be. It gives you a little bit of reassurance
Okay.
that we're looking in the right ballpark.
and at
And
what
you-
timeline is that done?
We would, we recommend doing it at design development, and then I think you carried another one at
We're gonna do it
construction.
twice.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you have two more estimates on
So
this
when
job.
we send our drawings out to
Yep.
TCI, we would send them to Colliers, and they would deal with whoever they're dealing with, and they would,
Sure. So your
Indeed,
so your
incorrect.
cost estimator is in your cost?
yes, that's
Your
already
cost. The
included in our
The
cost.
Colliers is not, so that's
Correct.
carried through that way. Okay.
Correct.
So when is the second reconciliation? Is that like 50% CDs or later?
We'd have to figure out a time, I don't, oh.
Sorry.
If you don't, that's fine.
We got it somewhere. Because it was all about 50%. Yep, we were doing 50%.
Are you recommending something else, Diana?
I wouldn't do it any later. That's
Do it a
all.
little later?
No, she wouldn't.
I wouldn't do it any later.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it. was
I think
gonna say,
50 's
okay.
great.
Yeah, I think 50%, yeah. I mean, I think we do the reconciliations regularly nowadays, and it's a good process. Our estimator is very much in favor of it. He said it gives a level of certainty as much as you can to it, and so.
Is it not required? I mean, I thought that was
Might be
statutory.
required, but we always do it, so
Yeah,
I don't know if it's required or not.
I didn't know if that was
either.
just an MSBA requirement or not, but I mean, I think
Oh, the reconciliation, you mean, or
Oh,
the,
the-
you have to
the-
do the cost
the
estimate.
third-party estimate or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think that's a requirement. I think it's an MSBA requirement.
That must
but-
be, okay.
It makes sense, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's worthwhile.
You know,
And then I guess if you slide down a little bit farther to the Section B expenses, owner's insurance, that just comes down, that's a percentage of the cost of the project, which, as you can see, slides, it's 0.15% of construction costs. So with construction costs coming down, so does that piece.
What's included in printing?
Printing's advertising, legal fees, all that
The
type of
documents
documents.
themselves.
Yeah.
Construction
10 to
documents.
20 grand?
It's expensive to print a set of drawings.
The hope is that we can do as much electronic as possible, but then there are fees for using that process for
Right.
a service that you would use for that.
There are a lot of subs that just use that paper to build that
Yeah.
building, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't
Yep.
change that.
and you have to pay for it, so.
Right.
And, there could be, I don't know how many drawings in this set, maybe 120
Yeah.
drawings in a double spec
Yeah,
section.
two books that are like
that
that,
big.
that go, yeah.
It's not
$4
small.
a sheet, so it's $500 a set.
Right.
I've
Adds
done
up.
sets, yeah.
Easy.
Especially if
Easy.
a handful of people request it, yeah,
And
it does add up.
I don't know about you guys, a lot of people are weaving color into their CDs now. So sometimes you print with those, so I mean, it's kind of a side note, but.
If it's a tricky detail, the color can be quite helpful, but
yeah,
it adds
it's like
cost.
that, yeah.
And so it gets us down to the contingency column.
Before you get to that.
Sure.
Consultant reimbursables, moving and relocation,
Yeah, that's us moving.
Yeah,
They have to move things.
but consultant reimbursables, what is that? in this context?
Oh,
It's
I
10 to
think-
30,000.
yeah, I think that goes along with materials testing if we have to do, if we have to bring in another consultant, concrete consultant, soils compaction testing, all of that stuff, and they need a consultant. There's at least a cost in there for it.
Okay.
And then contingency, we were carrying 6.5% based on the previous review of the estimate. Now that we've shaved some costs off of this estimate, we've also reduced our construction contingency down to 5%, which is really
That's normal.
normal. Yeah, 6.5 was just to give
Yeah.
some wiggle room, especially when we're this early in the phase.
So so do you have a separate design contingency from that? That's just included above the line, the design contingency?
Yeah.
What is the design contingency?
Oh, we have a design and pricing contingency of 10%
Right.
right now.
That's in,
The 10, right?
But that's in our budget,
that's in.
Yeah, yeah, no, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
so it's not, this is after the fact,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I thank you for making that change. When I saw that at
Yeah.
6.5, I thought that was a little awkward. So that reduced, between that and the other changes, just to reduce the construction contingency down by about 600,000.
Yeah.
And I think 5% for owner's contingency makes sense. That's the right number to use.
So that brings us down to a total project cost, a low proposal of 39.7 and a high-end range of 45.2. That's if no other changes are made, if no other scope is deducted. That's kind of where we're sitting at now.
Just, I think it's gonna be important to understand too, especially for people at home. Todd, can you speak to what the average cost of site development usually is?
It's usually 10% of
So-
construction
so
costs.
it's
so-
not 19%, it's 9 over the norm.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you would counter inflation and all that kind of stuff, so, just to get an understanding of.
I will have to add to that, that we haven't worked on a municipal site that's typical and normal. I mean, you guys, don't have the most perfect sites, you have to, especially in fire stations where location is so important. Sometimes you have a site that's less than perfect, but it's perfect for response time. And that's something, so 10% is like a low average, but I want to make that clear. It's not a perfect site. It's not a
I don't think
flat.
I've ever seen a fire station that's built on a perfect site. I can tell you there's been several who have been recently built, and I've had guys say, why did they build it there? Because that's where they had to build it.
Yeah, so I just want to bring that up, it's,
Ashland, Maynard, I could throw.
Yeah, so I mean, there's even just tonight coming up with a couple of things. The PV on the roof, we've been carrying that at $576,000. It sounds like it's gonna be in the 260 range for the base price, so there's a couple $100,000 off the top there. There was one other thing that I think Don brought up, that we're carrying 2.2 million on the geothermal. It's based on other geothermal projects. It's based on what the estimator put out there from TCI. So,
But it's a 2.2 differential from option 2,
yes,
but we're still including the fact that we are not, that we don't have the federal grant money in hand.
Correct.
The 2.2.
you have to
So it
spend.
looks
You
like.
have to put in what.
Yeah.
No, I know, it. I understand that.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
making that
it's a number
clear
that
to everyone.
goes later. So in reality, it's a 1.4 roughly
yeah.
difference as opposed to 2.2.
But we still have to write the check.
Yeah,
Can you make sure you speak to this, because everyone's got a
yeah.
copy
Yes.
of this? I think that's really a critical
Yeah,
concept for people
so
to.
I wish
have.
I was able to get it up on the screen for you. Okay, so this is a quick snapshot. The key part of this snapshot is it's a very accurate representation of the construction industry over the last 14 years. And on this page, I circled dots in the middle. They're kind of hard to see, but July of 2019, there were a majority of projects were done right around the $500 a square foot range.
These are schools.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
These are
this is
schools,
a
these aren't fire
snapshot
stations.
of schools in Massachusetts. And so I really just wanted to point out how far the square footage cost has increased in the last 4 years. On your sheet, you'll see the other cluster that I circled is where you're at today, if we were to make our decisions now. That school that I spoke of is Stoughton. They are at $849 a square foot, and that is with an anticipated bid date of June of '25. So they're just at the project scope and budget approval next month. I just really wanted to highlight that it is true that the square footage price has doubled in the last 4 years. I know that the $1,000 a square foot is a big number, but based on the 2019 kind of study that was done, it is in fact doubled since that point, since that 18 and 18.8 number that was out there. So.
I think it's important too to highlight the difference between a school and a fire station in construction. You know, schools are much bigger, and there's a certain economy of scales that contractors see with something like that. There's a lot of repetition in schools, the same classroom or very similar classroom repeated over and over and over again, versus a fire station, which has a lot of very specialized, smaller spaces. It's a very different building to build. So the fact that there's, you know, we're talking about $1,000 a square foot versus the 800, you know, it makes sense.
And I would say, schools obviously get prime choice on a site.
Yeah.
Your site cost, if we eliminated the site cost, you would be right around $925 a square foot. So you're right in line with where they're at.
And schools tend to have nice, flat-ish sites
Yeah.
with wide-open grassy spaces for fields and all. It's different.
They spent $550 a square foot for the Fales School in Westboro, which was built 3 to 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's local.
Yeah.
It just, when I saw this, it really got my attention of how much, you know, I love graphs, you guys know you get them all the time from me. But you look at this and you go, wow, that is a radical change in 4 years, so, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
You can actually, you see it, okay.
You know what else is?
59% growth, hockey stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hockey stick. You know what else is interesting on this graph is the bottom line, the gray line on the bottom. I don't know if you can tell it's gray. It ends at January of '24. It's the lowest kind of line. That's the 3% escalation rate. That's the only thing that stayed consistent. How far away these projects are from that 3% escalation rate. So.
What do you see in the next 2, 3, 4 years? Continuation?
So, well, a good point was the estimator from TCI said he projected out until September or fall of this year, and to expect 7 or 8% increase for each year after that.
Right now.
So you could spend
Nothing changes.
a year or two redesigning and lose all that savings due to inflation.
Exactly right.
Correct.
So we need to act.
Yes.
I mean, so my office does schools, and we also do mission-critical projects, and we have 2 mission-critical projects. And I can tell you, I thought our square foot cost would be higher because of that than it is. And the ones we're seeing are higher than this. So I think the graph is great, but to go back to the fact that this is so much more complicated than a school. I mean, I don't feel at this point that the design, I'm thinking more about the plan and the site. And I mean, we've made the most economical decisions we can in order to support the proper level of operations. So, I mean, we've taken out, you know, if we take out the PVs, right? I mean, next you're gonna have to start looking at exterior materials, which I don't think
Granite
we have an
curbing,
appetite for.
granite curbing, $85,000
There you go.
plus contingency. That's 90-ish.
Yeah.
Someone asked me last week, if this goes to a town meeting, a special town meeting, and it doesn't get approved, what's Plan B?
Plan
So
B
there
to
is
come
no
back
Plan B.
Plan B is to come back next year with the same thing.
And we know that if we cross that bridge, it's gonna be more expensive. We've got sunk costs already here. We've got to restart the clock with everybody here. It's cost plus.
So interestingly enough, I've done some research, I was looking at some projects. Great example is Charlton, is right about where we are right about now. But they're building a substation, not a main station, and they price out to about $1,300 a square foot. Westwood is building, they price out right around the same area. They're not building, they're the same place that we are. So it's like, I'm looking going, because my first concern when I got it was, are we out of whack? Are we asking for too much? Have we not made those good decisions? And when I started looking at it, I said, God, they're higher than we are. So we have made some pretty good decisions. It just, COVID messed us up. Had we built 5 years ago when we talked about this, 4 years ago, be a different ballgame.
And inflation.
Oh, inflation's always gonna be, yeah.
So what are you looking for tonight?
Well, I do want to say that, I want to acknowledge John and Diana and Mitch all sent us questions. We got them last night at 8:00, so we didn't, but there were a couple that I can tell you, like Mitch asked, do we need an elevator? Yes, we just had our code meeting last week, absolutely need an
Okay,
elevator.
because that was an open question.
It was an open question,
Yeah.
but I did want to tell you that.
Okay.
We do know that, you asked if we could bring the building forward. We cannot get the turning, yes, technically we can bring the building forward. That means every time the chief returns, Captain DeBoer and the
Yep.
deputy return with the truck, that they will be blocking the traffic on Route 20, on West Main to get the trucks in. The turning radius, the aprons that were set, and the location of the building allow that the only truck that may have a little bit of difficulty is the tower truck, the ladder truck, which is 42 feet long. Most of the other ones are at 32. So we didn't push it back as far as we could have, because we also wanted to bring them out in the back. So I hope that answers that
Yeah,
question.
in some of these questions, I'm trying to make sure we answer publicly.
Yes, and I do want
yeah.
to, but I just want to pick off the low-hanging
Yep.
fruit for you.
I actually have a follow-up question on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
When the trucks return, and this could be to you, Chief, when a truck returns, do you turn on I forget what you call it, the red light in front of the station? Do you turn that on?
No, the preemption, no.
Okay, perfect. Because if we pulled it forward, we would obviously need to
Oh, yes,
turn on that red
absolutely.
Well, you
light.
have
because
two
you would
options,
have
you
to.
can either use the preemption, but like
Yeah.
what we do right now, where we are right now.
Yeah.
It swings up, they stop, officer jumps out, somebody else jumps out, the lights go on, the truck has to swing, our red lights on
Yeah.
the truck goes on, has to swing out in the middle of the road and
Yeah.
then back in. That's the only way to get it in
Yep.
our station now.
Yep, yep. So
you
that, to me, that answers that question, because with the current design, you do not need to block traffic
Right.
when most vehicles return. If we pulled it forward to save a little bit of money on the wall, you would need to block traffic every time a truck
Every time
returned.
it comes back.
Yeah,
And I
and
think-
traffic is a real concern.
I mean, it's also important, I think, to note the safety impact, too. I mean, you're coming back from an event in the middle of the night, your guys are tired, they're having to jump out of the truck and go out in the middle of the road. Maybe there's not a lot of traffic there, but
We're running
maybe there is.
2,500 calls a year. Some days we're doing 12, 13, 14 calls a day. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's a safety consideration.
Eliminating some of the parking in the rear, the last road traffic was 18 feet deep, approximately, give or take, that we'd be moving the wall forward.
Yeah.
South. It takes 2 to 3 feet off the top of that wall only, Mitch,
Okay.
to do that, and you lose all that parking.
Yep.
So you're not picking up, if we were gonna cut 10, 15 feet down, I'd say, let's do it. Let's
wall,
look a
okay.
waiver and move parking up front to West Main and go against the design guideline, whatever. But you're not gonna do that. You're picking up 2 to 3 feet
3 feet
That's it.
off of 30.
off of 30,
So it would be,
28.
yeah, but it might be, it wouldn't be 10% of the cost of the
Oh,
whole
gosh,
thing.
no.
It might be 5% cost reduction, if that.
Yeah, because you're still digging out all the soil, you're still doing all
Yeah,
that stuff. So
yeah.
it's a tiny.
And then we would-
And the sacrifice of the change, because we still need the drive-through, we still need the transfer,
Yep.
still need all the parking for the fire department back there. I just wanted to, a
Thank
couple of
you.
them that I can, we'll put that, the pergolas and things like that.
Yeah.
The reason we put the pergola in was the design review committee suggested with the south facing elevation was gonna be really hot in there. The pergola also does things, it provides some shade back there because it is south facing, and it, could help with the energy cost, because, they might crank it up a little bit. So we designed the pergola. We had designed one originally on one of our early designs and took it out, though we put it back in for pricing. We can certainly take it out, and they can buy umbrellas. But we may want to think about a small shading thing right at the door, an overhang of some sort to give them a little bit of shading on that side. But we can take that out. Again,
The latest feedback that we got from design review is they say they did not request the pergolas. There must have been some
They
miscommunication
suggested we
somewhere.
look
So
at
if
it.
you watch the video, what Dave said was, needs shading back there. His preference would be something that comes off the wall like that. He would definitely be against umbrellas because they blow away in the middle of the snow, the winter. So the interpretation was, let's try this.
Yeah. And it's, it's a cost we can take out.
But
we
I,
should
but I
put
think what
something-
Janet's saying is important. I mean, it's a mechanical way of shading that solar exposure, and it does have an impact on the solar heat gain in the building and the mechanical systems in the building if you don't have some sort of mechanical, physical block for that, or shade for that, so.
We talked about the radiant floors a little bit tonight with Adam. The aprons, you could definitely not put the snow melt in. We've certainly done plenty of stations without it. It's a real advantage. It's an instant, especially when the building's facing north, and the ice tends to build up a little bit more than south facing, so it's a plus, but we could
I'm just
take
gonna
that
speak
out.
to that real quick, because right now, we run into this horribly. When, even with the guys doing their best to keep it clean, when we get those heavy snows, you know what? We tend to get busy, right? So by the time, and the DPW swings in, plows, and leaves. So by the time we get back, we've gone in and out of that station 4 or 5 times, we now have this big bump that is solid ice. And now we have to, as we go out of the station, we're coming up and over the spot, and it's just, it's a safety issue, it's a maintenance issue on the vehicles, because we're hitting this bump. It's a time issue where our guys have to be out there trying to shovel, and when they should maybe having some downtime if they had time. So I'm a huge proponent. Could we reduce the amount? Sure, we could reduce the amount that it goes out. But that front area, right, the first 10 to 15 feet of the door is important.
And what are we carrying now? How many?
20.
20? Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That from my perspective, the apron needs to get heated.
It's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a fair question, but to me, it's an easy answer. Maybe we reduce it 5 feet if that's not an impact and if it saves a reasonable amount of money. I wouldn't want to go more than that. The radiant, I had more of a question about as.
Dom, and we can talk to Dom more about it. We haven't done Amy said, of course we've done fire stations recently without radiant floors. And I said, this one. She said, we haven't done a fire station without a radiant floor in so long. We couldn't even remember the last one. Every fire department wants them. They dry out the trucks. They do heat the mass. And I know
Spend
that,
a lot of time on the apparatus.
yeah, so, it's a good product.
Heating the apparatus area, I'm not saying.
Oh, I know. No.
We'd have to compensate it with somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I know Dom was talking about if all the doors are open and it's a 0-degree day and all the, the air rushes out, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit more time for the radiant system to heat up. It doesn't mean that the building has lost all that value in the massing, so.
It's an aircraft hangar.
Pardon me?
It's a big footprint. It's an aircraft hangar.
Yeah. So we'll ask that question. Roof monitors, quick thing on roof monitors. We can certainly take them out. Doesn't mean we're not putting something back in place. You're gonna put a roof. So, and you lose all the light quality inside the operations working spaces, but you could definitely take them out if push comes to shove. And I know one of your bigger things was the square footage number.
I want to answer it as far as the roof monitor,
Oh,
because
yes,
I don't want
yes.
to leave that. I think I prefer having the daylight in there. Prefer. Ultimately, it depends on, I'm very curious as to what the cost differences are. When I first reviewed that 26-page sheet, I had a rough number and I've forgotten it. The fact that it may allow us to do more solar on the top, which would increase energy savings and money savings in the building, operational savings, I am even a little bit more inclined to think seriously about it, but I don't know what the number is. So that's, from my perspective, and I might be the only one, if I'm the only one, we drop it, I think it's worth looking at, removing them, removing the monitors.
So if you remove the daylighting component, then you're gonna have to use electric lighting, LED probably.
Well, you need lighting anyway, because it's turned on at
You
night.
might not have to have the lights on as much
Yeah.
as during the daytime.
Yeah.
Depends
But
on
we
what they're
also,
doing.
we also talk a lot about the health of your team. And how many studies do we need to read about the impacts of daylight on
Makes a big difference.
mental abilities, absenteeism, all of those things? I just, that's why I'm stuck on keeping them personally.
But I think the
Neil?
deputy has something he wanted to say.
Just Mitch,
Yeah.
cause I have to do inspections on PVs and doing them for years. And
Sure.
when you put them on the flat roof, you
Yeah.
get your snow load.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away. When you put them on an angled roof, the snow goes off and they continue to absorb energy. When
Mhm.
they build a snowpack of a couple feet, until that snow melts,
Mhm.
those aren't producing any energy.
And I'm not gonna answer these, these are kind of low-hanging, quick things. You did talk about the square footage number, and how that was resolved. It was 26,420 square feet in 2019, and ours is at 30,850. What's the delta difference?
Yeah.
We did,
About 13%.
yeah, it's about 13, 14%, that's the number.
Okay.
The difference is, we didn't compare them because that wasn't our job.
Right.
But I can tell you, they did not include hot and cold zones in the way we do them.
Okay.
So every time they provided that opportunity to clean themselves or get rid of their equipment, they walked back into the contaminated area to walk to the next space. They had no way of getting out of that space and into their private quarters without going back into the apparatus. So there's a little bit of square footage there. Their rooms were perhaps smaller, they might not have had as many offices, I don't know how future thinking they were, the chief would have to speak to that, they had no elevator. Their MEPFP space was a little limited, they did not have the new energy code to work with it and provide, things
Big
to work with.
difference, yeah.
So there's some things, and we have about 17 pieces of equipment, they had 16 pieces of equipment. Their doors did not meet the energy code in the apparatus. Their equipment stuck into the zone of the ZOR, so if there was opening, they could not get out.
The egress code.
The egress doors,
egress.
patterns. So things we noticed early on, so there's reasons. I also would not want to criticize the architects who did that site. They were doing a study.
They were doing a feasibility
They
study
were doing
5
a
years ago.
feasibility study, they had different marching orders, a different process, this is our process, this is what we do based on experience. So I will say that, yes, there's a difference.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
And I brought that up, I mentioned it
Yeah,
in the email.
exactly.
I and probably many of us have heard, oh, it's 30% bigger, it's 40% bigger, it's 25% bigger.
Right.
I want it, and we also know there's gross area square foot and net area square foot and everything in between. I wanted a one-to-one from the professionals.
Yeah.
That answers that question.
And then Diana, you talked about the LCCA and how that would
I think that
enter
was
the
covered
conversation, so
well,
we don't have
yeah.
to go through that. You did ask other experience. Our firehouses have included pretty much every basic material you can imagine. We've done block with cementitious products, we've done brick with cedar shingles, we've done brick with painted clapboards, we've done all cementitious products. I mean, they have varied depending on the client's budgets and cost. And all masonry, again. So, our products have been all over the place. Any building material will survive if you take care of it. Panelized products are less perhaps good. The way they produce them and the way that you attach them is not so pretty, as opposed to laying up a shingle in a normal pattern. So you get, a panelized product may be cheaper, like a shingle product, but it's gonna look like, it's not gonna look great. So, you can
I
do
don't
that.
disagree,
Huh?
there are very few places to take money out of the building, so.
Yeah.
Ask the question.
So I think, again, I always tell people, you have to take care of your buildings. You have to recaulk them, you have to paint them if they need to be. You don't put up products that you can't get to and maintain, sort of thing. Time of the essence, and then, we talked about the thing, and then John, your comment, got down to, everything that's not, fire station required for the staff or code is on the table. And then you have brought up, do we need to get estimate done? And to us, that led to a lot of these things, is do you have a limit? Do you have a number you want us now to reach for? Or do you want us to continue on the process? That's what we need to hear from you tonight. Where are we headed? As we're doing design development, we're taking the pathway that, we've shown you. If we have to cut materials and, if we're talking the exterior materials, we're gonna go to flat roofs, no arches. We're gonna strip the building of everything to get it simple, because we still have to meet the energy code. We still have to provide the products behind that material that you see. And that's what, and then, so we have to restart the process of design. And, if, because we know that if you put up a CMU block, it's a little bit cheaper in labor than a brick. But then you do a block. Is that an acceptable product to the town? Same with clapboards, same with, are we gonna put up a clapboard building? Is that an acceptable building to the town, for instance? So those kind of things. So that's why we felt we had to do this kind of a slide tonight. We can talk about all these details and we'll try to get back on some of them, but, is there a number that you want us to hit?
I would start by saying I don't think that this group has come up with a number. I think we want to do the best we can for, put out the best product we can, obviously as frugally as we can do it. But I don't think that there's a preconceived number. Is there anybody that disagrees or agrees?
I don't think there's a rational way we could design to a number, because
No.
we wouldn't,
We'd have to take a chainsaw to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work. We designed to the program.
So that means that we are in agreement that they should keep going.
They should keep going the way they're doing.
Yeah, if you cheapen the quality of the building and the systems, it's gonna be detrimental to the staff of the fire station. We are gonna regret it, and we're just pushing costs onto the next generation. Because they're gonna have to rebuild, redo, rework. I don't think morally we can keep pushing costs to our children. I mean, and also, we're getting older, this generation. And the community's aging out. So you're gonna have more fixed income occupants in the town. So I think sooner the better we complete a quality building is what I'm for.
And that being said, I think we're all still looking at areas we could cut, and it doesn't affect the quality or the building itself. So,
And I guess the only other follow-up for me, I mean, if I'm generally hearing that from most people here, but the mechanical systems, we said we'd
Well-
go back into that by the end of the night. which
Before
is
we
what-
get there,
Yeah,
I had talked to Tim earlier, and one of the things I found really interesting, he told me, he says, do you realize what they're charging to haul the dirt off the site? $800,000. He says, do you have a place in town we can dump that? As opposed to having to haul it all the way out to wherever. I said, you know what? Let me talk to some people. Maybe we could find something, because I'm thinking of a site we may be buying not too distant future that may have room to put some stuff.
We'd have to work through conservation on that, but that's
Obviously.
possible.
But I'm saying, 800, that's a big number.
Yeah.
So I just found that fascinating. And there were some other things that he put out, and I don't want to get into it all today. I'll send it out to you guys as an email. But one of the things I'd like is Deputy Spazey has direct relationship to a construction project that happened in Southborough, right? And actions they took and the results of those actions. So if you don't mind, could you indulge me? I'd like to give him a few minutes to speak to that. Come up to a mic there.
Here.
Have a seat.
Do I need to be anointed? All right. So, yes, in fact, I worked in Southborough, and yes, in fact, I was there when we built the station at 32 Quarterville Road, which is a public safety building. Has its advantages and it has significant disadvantages. The one thing I will say about a public safety building is all it is two buildings with a little bit of common space. So you're not saving a lot. And a lot of those common spaces, you're trying to work between each other, and they don't necessarily work very well. However, one thing, when they did that committee, and I applaud Northborough for allowing the fire chief to be on it and a representative from the fire department, they did not allow that in Southborough. It was civilians only. And the fire chief was liaisons, and the fire department didn't really have much say in the building and the construction of the building. So the first one was the HVAC, which that is the Achilles heel of the fire department in Southborough. They went with that chilled beam system, which I double-checked with Don before he left. That's not one of these systems. That system has not worked correctly since they got it. It will not consistently cool the building. It will not consistently warm the building. They have done everything. There's been leaks. There's been all these things, leads to morale issues. The point of it is that the facilities director specifically said, of these three that you're putting on the table, I do not want that one. Guess what they picked? They picked that one. So they kind of were like, okay, well, it was cheaper, let's go with it. They continued to cut and cut and cut, to the point where it's like, well, this one can have electronic entry, this one can be a key, this light switch is cheaper than this one, all down the road. The amount of money that the town has put into that building since it turned key and walked in the door has been significant. I don't have the numbers, I am getting the numbers, but it's significant, you know, and it's a disservice, unfortunately, to the citizens and the taxpayers, because they put all this money that could be bonded, you know, and they cut and cut and cut and cut. And yeah, up front, it was like, hey, we saved like however much money. But now, in operational budgets, which is direct tax dollars, is going into that building, it's not a very good investment. You know, the doors are low quality, they leak, you know, there's a lot of these things. So when you talk about trimming down to save money, you know, to your point, you're really not saving money. And when you're investing, you know, and I think that the drive of this project as well, from what I hear being new, is some projects in the past have been, you know, this could be the project that everything is set right. Like, yes, a little bit more expensive here and there, whatever, but we're building a quality product, and that'll set a tone for the next product. You know, the dollar figure, it's big, but as we know, it's because of inflation. I mean, it is what it is. It's, everybody knows, you know, you buy a car, you buy a house, you go to the grocery store. I mean, everything's more expensive. You know, would it be nice to build this building for, you know, 18 million? Then, yeah, but it's not gonna do it. You know, and the same with some of the cost figures, that building for 18 million in 2019 isn't 18 million today dollars. You know, you talk about 22% inflation over the years, you know, it's up close to $25 million for that building, and it didn't meet a lot of the needs. So, so to the point about the Southborough project is it was definitely a lesson learned that, you know, it sounded great in theory, and it did save dollar money up front, but it definitely is hitting not just the next generation, it's hitting the generation now. So, so I would caution against that. Cut would make sense, but don't start just cutting things to cut things.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted the deputy was talk was not to say, okay, don't cut anything. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, let's think about the decisions we make. Let's think, and so far, I can tell you this group has been outstanding with that. It hasn't been, yes, I agree with you 100%, let's do this, right? We've actually been thinking about it. And if we're looking at, and the reason I wanted him to speak before we made the decision about the heating was that we need to consider that, right? So is going with the cheapest system right now, getting that lower number to get the station through, is that the best choice? Or as Mitch had mentioned, or some other, right, you guys, does it make more sense to go with the higher number, understanding we may get some of that back through incentives and all that, to have a better outcome in the long run with the building? Does that make sense? What I'm trying to, so what I'm trying to say is, I appreciate everyone thinking about it and not just saying cut, but thinking about it logically. Okay, maybe we reduce this by 5 feet, or maybe we do go with the geothermal. Maybe it's more expensive, but we feel we can justify that in the long run, and they're the ones we have to justify it to. Not us, because we can all be on board, but it's those people and the people that are watching that we have to justify it to. That's where my concern was, but I just want to make sure I feel better now that I said it.
I mean, I agree with everything that you and said. I think it would be a huge mistake for us to go ahead and say, let's just cut 10% of the size, or let's just save 10% of the cost, or anything like that. That's the wrong way to work. Our job is to build a good fire station, a working fire station. We have to do that, and if we take the wrong approach to it, we're failing in our mission. And I don't want us to do that. And I will stand up in front of, I'd rather lose a town meeting presenting a good station than get it and say, good, we got one, we're building whatever. Because the town will pay for that. I also think it is the job of this board, now that we have the first round of cost estimates in front of us, to go through that and look for opportunities. And there'll be little opportunities. I hope no one watching this, I know no one at this table thinks this. We're going to find, great, that saves us $6 million. It's not gonna happen. We might save a few $1,000s here and there where we can say, yeah, that actually does make sense to remove or make that alteration. We've made a few of those already. I mean, this aluminum and zinc thing, we kind of saved a little bit of money and it turned out it was a better item. It wasn't a ton of money. We saved a little bit. I think there's an opportunity and a responsibility for us to do that. My experience is that we look to the OPM initially for some thoughts where you would come back and say, all right, if you wanted to save some money, here are the first things that we would look at, because you are an expert at construction. None of us are. We have two people that are experts on how to run a fire station, how to run a fire department, but not how to build. So I, from my perspective, I would like very much to hear from you with your thoughts as to if we wanted to look at pros and cons of cutting some things, and, you know, every cut comes with a con. Where would you suggest we look first?
Okay. I think that kind of answers your questions as far as how to proceed.
Right, right, except for the mechanical. I mean, that's the only thing, because, I mean, you know, Tim did look at a bunch of them, and said, he and I talked about them. Some of them we talked about tonight, reducing the square footage, going to flat roofs, the roof monitor elimination, alternative roofing materials, not metal, seam, but shingles, alternative to brick veneer, metal panels or hardy board, which is a cementitious, doing the straight retaining walls would save money rather than the batter.
Save $300,000, $297.
The mechanical system we've been talking about, and then the surplus soils he worried about. Eliminating the arches on the facade, eliminating the roof decks, at least one of them. We have a mechanical, we have screening, okay, in the mechanical, depending on where it ends up, we may need to screen, so we own something. Reducing the amount of storefront and curtain walls, that would be by getting rid of some of the decking in the back. Talk about the radiant heat, snow melt areas, and the zinc panels. So he did go through all these. We've gone through and we've talked about.
That's why I just forwarded to you all.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so we
When-
do know, we
When
do
did you
know.
forward that?
Just now.
Oh, just now,
I just
okay.
sat here and did it just now.
So there are some things that we've talked about, and a lot of them
Yeah.
we just talked about tonight. So I do want to say, we've been talking about it. you
Yes,
know,
but
it's not-
we haven't.
Yeah.
And I
So,
think it's important for us to do that.
There's a lot of that. You know, he did talk about a pre-engineered building for the apparatus bays. I mean, I would say.
There's lots of things you
no
can do to make
way.
it, it'd be ugly.
Make it look like Hillside
It doesn't
Grill.
save money. It doesn't save money. Let me just
It
make that
doesn't
clear.
save money, and
We've
it
been
creates
looking
a
at this
lot
for
of detailing
years.
problems. Sometimes the way that they taper, you actually have to increase the square footage to get the doors to work. So you might be getting the taper, but all you're saving is that, and then you can't add a
Pay me now, pay me
a
later.
piece of rope to the frame. Not a good idea in our thing, but, you know, certain people believe in it. We've had that question recently from another client. Is a pre-engineered building worth it? And
So
we say,
what I would like to recommend as far as the mechanicals go,
yeah.
is I will talk to Jason tomorrow. What I'm recommending is this. I talk to Jason tomorrow, I tell him, look, can you get to this in a week? We have another meeting, we have a Zoom meeting next Wednesday, and we make a decision next Wednesday.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is from his perspective, what's the risk
Yep.
of not getting those? I mean, given that these are state and federal laws that are in place right now, I think the risk is really low. But I would like him to tell us that. And I am curious on, it's a secondary question, but can we work that into the bond repayment cycle?
The way we construct that bond repayment.
Yeah, so that the citizens get maximum initial benefit of that.
Yep.
You know, we'll, in theory, have a couple $1 million coming in. The best way to use that couple $1 million. And he may even have a different idea.
Okay,
I trust him for that.
the chief just threw in a meeting on Wednesday night. Are you guys available?
They don't have to necessarily be there.
Yeah,
This is us to decide. They don't have to be there.
okay.
We're,
So,
they've presented I don't mean to tell you guys, but I don't think they need to be there. They presented it. The engineers presented it. We're just gonna get the information from Jason and base our decision on what we've already been presented to and what we heard.
And I guess the only other thing, then, if you don't have to be here, if you have things that you would like us to discuss, to get those to the
Okay,
chief.
is that gonna be a Zoom meeting or a live meeting?
Zoom.
Zoom.
Well, let's see what we can, I don't know, I have no idea on my schedule. I do wanna, did remind me, oh my God, we forgot the schedule here. But, yeah, that's fine. So,
So 6:30 next Wednesday?
yeah, 6:30, okay.
All right.
And then just the last thing is scheduled, we do have a planning board meeting scheduled for April 16th. The documents are in, that's set. I have, anything in red is still up in the air. We had tentatively had another meeting on April 17th. So 3 weeks, I guess 3 weeks from now. Is that 3 weeks? Yeah, something like 2.5, 3 weeks, yeah. And then we're meeting on May 1st. The design estimate has to go to the estimator, so you have to sign off on that. We have a community information session for May 8th, and then we have scheduled the next design review meeting on May 9th. That's scheduled. We have a possible land disturbance meeting on May 13th. It's really dependent on what they hear at the planning board.
Yeah, that's what I
whether they
sent
get
to all
that
you,
done.
right, yeah.
And then a following planning board meeting. The one thing that Mark, after we set this and everybody, and I discussed it with the engineers, and I discussed it with Lloyd Connors, Mark said, you realize that the planning board documents number 2 are due the day before the first planning board meeting. So how can you do that? We do know they have a little bit of, and it really depends on how many issues they have, whether, it's that. So that may have to be moved just simply because of that. So I just wanted to go through that with you. So there are, we don't have to go back to the ZBA, which is great. I was always a tentative meeting, but we'll have 2 planning board meetings by the end of May, and the land disturbance, possibly a community session and design review as meeting. So the ones in red are the ones that are to be determined, and then items 12 and 13 are dependent on what they hear at the planning board meeting, so they're kind of codependent.
Janet, do you have an agenda or an idea of what the planning board's going to want to discuss with you next month?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's really a civil-driven set of drawings. It's with the planning board now being reviewed.
The posting went out today for the meeting.
Posting went out, and there have been a couple questions from Scott Charpentier that came out today, I think, that we forwarded.
Yeah, about
to them.
stormwater, dealing with stormwater.
Something they can't do, or they don't do, or something like that. So they'll have to respond to them, and so, whether they might have those answers by that meeting, or, and hopefully that was resolved, but they will probably go back. The question is, can they get to that next planning board meeting and produce the documents that are missing or short in a short enough time, and will the planning board members give us that little bit of time to get that done, rather than their typical timeframe? So, it sits up there, but it again is in red, because we don't know what's gonna happen at the planning board meeting. So I guess the big question for you guys is this April 17th meeting, do we need it? What we'll be doing and all that? We don't have an agenda yet. It would be a design meeting or whatever else, or do we wait?
I don't think we need the 17th meeting.
Okay.
Give them more time to do some work and get some stuff done.
Chief, may I suggest at least a check-in on a Zoom in terms of you're 2.5, 3 weeks out from now, you've got the planning board stuff, what's going on? It could be a short meeting, but I think a check-in is needed
With them or just us?
with them, a short check-in with them.
Yeah,
opinion.
that's the day
My
after the
opinion.
planning board meeting, yeah.
Dawn's
We
not
could do a Zoom.
available.
I'm not available on that whole week.
Are we talking about the 17th?
Yeah. What's the availability of people?
I already have it on my calendar.
Dan's not available. I'm just getting back, well, I'm coming back the 17th from Florida. I mean, the 16th for the planning board meeting. I'll be back in time.
So, again, we don't have to make that decision tonight,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, this schedule hasn't really changed, all these meetings. They've just gone red, or they've gone out. I mean, there was a zoning board meeting that's got taken out now, and because we're resolved, and we talked to the land disturbance,
Concom, yeah. Can you guys just put it in your calendar for the 17th, and we can make the decision at next Wednesday?
Okay.
yeah, okay.
That sound fair?
That might be
That's
the
good.
last slide.
Yeah, we can put
Okay.
on the decision.
Yeah.
Henry's been waiting a long time to ask his question, so
A simple
public
question.
input.
I don't
No,
know.
there is no such a thing.
In the
Excuse me,
geothermal,
before you speak, I need your name and your address before you
Henry
speak.
Scolani, 72 Crestwood Drive.
Thank you.
In the geothermal system, did you include the price of digging those number of holes that were discussed today? That's in that price?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
The other piece of information for the chief to sell this to the town, the median age of the town is 44.8 years. I just looked it up a few minutes ago. When you're talking about paying off for 33 years, a lot of the voters aren't gonna care about that 33 years. That's just a comment.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm very concerned.
Nobody hear that, right?
I'm sorry, if I could, Henry, paying off what in 33 years?
The geothermal system, using the federal credits, I heard that was payoff in 33 years.
No, payoff is immediate. Payoff is as soon as we get that money back.
The immediate.
Just
Yeah.
the
If
tax,
we-
the tax credit
Yeah,
dropped
so
it from
it's-
45 to
Yeah,
33.
it becomes,
and then
within 1 year after, as soon
Okay.
as we get the money back, it
Becomes
becomes the
immediate.
least expensive of the three options.
if everything falls together.
Yes.
It was mentioned a payoff of 30.
That was the original. Yeah, that's if we don't do anything. Yeah, if we don't get any credits.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hi. Hi, all. My name is Grace Petita Williamson. As of March 6th, I now am the proud owner of 20 Monroe Street. And if you're looking at your map, that is abutting in now your new neighbor. I found out about this on March 7th, which is the day after we bought the house. So we're new, we're a family of 4. I have to say I'm a little bit anxious. I knew there was a firehouse in the town, did not know we were even neighbors. So I'm asking for some consideration as I ask a lot of questions. Happy to be here, had a lot of questions. I will say, so I guess the question is more just consideration going in the future. But, we're looking at long-term sustainability. We're either gonna pay now or we're gonna pay later. And later could mean in 5 years, later can mean in 10 years. So I'm just asking, as you guys consider, it's not just the payment. And as a citizen now and a voting member, and have my Massachusetts driver's license, consider that in the price of things. It's either the firehouse is gonna be contributed with that price, or the town will be paying for that price for sustainability, so. And if there's someone I need to talk to get caught up on things, I'd really appreciate someone reaching out to me.
Why don't you come down to the fire station, contact the fire station, you can come down and speak to me, and the deputy or I will speak to you, and we'll get you all caught up.
Yeah, I'm a little bit shell-shocked, to be
Yeah,
completely
not a
honest.
problem.
I got the forward letter from the former landowner the day after we bought the house, so.
Welcome.
Thanks.
We sent a letter out to all the abutters a couple months ago. We didn't think
Yeah,
about sending it
she
to
got
to
She got
future.
it in January.
Yeah.
I got it March 7th.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
I can't say I was super happy, but that's just the way it is.
Oh, I'd love to live next door. The fire station's a great place to live.
okay. Any other business that legally
Are there
can
any
come
other
before the
public
committee?
comment?
Huh?
Is there any other public comment?
Any other public comments? I didn't see any other hands, but,
We still haven't gone through any opportunities we haven't talked about cost savings. I know the architects did, and the project manager did. We haven't done that yet.
We didn't?
No, we didn't. We didn't. We have a 26-page budget document with, John has a few pink notes on there. That's our job. That's our job. We might save nothing, we might save something. I'm not looking for savings that save $10 million. I'm not expecting to find that, but we have a job to do of reviewing that.
well,
So I have a question, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have shown the graph, though, like, we still have some time. Do we want to continue with what we have, or at least, like, how much do we feel we need to cut right now if we're able to get more cost information on things that we want to keep in the design, or that are on the fence? So I guess my point is,
Yeah.
we need to be very deliberate about what we're going to look at seriously right now. Because once it's out, it's out. But if you're gonna do a
Yeah.
DD estimate and a 50% CD estimate,
Yep.
we have more time to understand the impact of the cost. You're gonna have more accurate costs because they've drawn more.
But this is an opportunity that we can go through, and if we see justification to make some changes, we can do that before they're too far down the road, that it would then become cumbersome or expensive to make those changes. I don't have a target dollar amount, I just think we have the responsibility to go through that process.
I don't disagree with you, but I think as Diana said, if we go through without knowing what the actual cost, we've already seen drops in cost. Great example is, had we gone through this last week
Yeah.
and said, geothermal, gone, because it's too much money. We wipe it off, we're not gonna do it. We just found out it could be significantly cheaper. So I think what Diana's saying is we need to wait until we're further along and along in the process, have better numbers to actually look at and say, okay, now we can make these decisions based on the actual numbers.
But
I don't wanna
some
move-
of those decisions will not be available to us.
Is that
Give
accurate?
some examples, for just
Yeah.
for me, like
I-
what should we decide to cut tonight?
I don't know what we should decide, but we have to discuss it, I think. I mean, I'm very interested in following up on the roof monitors. If everyone else says, I don't care what they cost, we have to do them, then let's not bother.
But you're
talking
saying,
about it.
you're making it sound as if we are at that fork in the road right now.
I think we are pretty darn close to it for a lot of materials, for HVAC system design,
The HVAC, mechanical
Yeah,
system
that one we
is
need to
crucial.
decide.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Roof monitors, there's a couple that are like, like it would be really nice to know because we're detailing things. Like, if you're gonna not do standing seam, like, there's a difference between detailing a standing seam roof and a shingle roof, there is. And so, how many details are we gonna draw? Do we avoid doing all those drawings so that we don't have to draw them twice? What about the edge details, So there are some things, I mean, we could probably maybe come up with a list of saying things that we need some instantaneous decision for these reasons? If that would be helpful?
I think that would be very helpful.
I mean, we can say, okay, we're not gonna put, we absolutely recommend, a terrace off of the, living quarters for the fire department, but maybe the terrace off the other side is not required. We have two terraces. And we take the other one out. We could do that, we can make those kind of things, it'd be really nice to have it. But, we're gonna save a little bit, okay, we'll save a little bit, sort of thing. But, we could probably do something like that. It's not gonna be perfect at this point, but we
I
could.
think it's probably more important for us to know, and again, we can discuss this at next week's meeting if you guys want.
Yeah.
To say, we need to know this by this.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we need to know, so for instance, we need to know the mechanical by next Wednesday. Great, we got that. And then we need to know this by this date. That gives us a little bit more idea of what we should be talking about now and what can wait.
Right.
Does that make?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could submit.
Amy, you have some, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think like Janet was saying, things like the mechanical systems are really critical, but the overall building design too. If we're talking about changing exterior materials, changing the look of the building or something, that we need to know.
I think we've
Like,
already
that's-
decided we're not changing the
Yeah.
look of the building.
Yeah, I think that's,
I mean, Tom brought up reducing the height of the tower. I
Well, yeah.
I don't want to do
Raising the
that.
height, we need to look at
But we
that.
need to know that. Yeah, you need to know that.
Well, I leave
yeah.
that up to, I mean, you have a program
Right.
for that tower.
Yes.
Is there any way of reducing the size of the stair or the tower or stepping it back or?
We'll look a little bit, because we still need to work on the tower.
Only thing I can think of is I don't think this way,
I don't-
but this way. You're not
If
gonna be
you're,
able to do this.
no, not that way. If you're okay with
Because of the
looping
stair
hoses.
in the
If you're okay
There
with
because of the
looping,
hose
so we'll
storage,
talk to the
because-
chief about the looping options.
They'll change the look of the building significantly,
Yeah.
reducing the height of the tower.
Maybe 4 or 5 feet?
But what's the cost savings?
It's the look, I mean.
It's the look, it's not
Yeah.
cost.
It's kind of awkward
For
for me.
proportion issue.
Janet,
Got
the
it.
the February 26th estimate, there's 25 pages here broken down by specific areas. And I think, it behooves us to look into each of these to understand what's in there and to see where there may be something that is, been padded that's extra, we don't understand it. I think it's important for us to, as a committee, to be comfortable with this.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I just think that tonight's not the night to do that.
Right, Chief.
and I don't think we need to do it item by item. I think each
Well,
one
there are
of us need
sections.
to look
Yeah,
at it.
sections is
Yeah.
different. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I think to go line item by line item,
No.
But that does need to be a meeting with the design team, because I guarantee you, they've gone line by line,
Yes, we
and they
have.
can tell us why
Right.
certain
Why it's
things
there.
are,
Yep.
so it wouldn't be next
A
Wednesday.
lot of those are just, hey, I see this thing and it's $300,000, what is it? And you could say, it's this, and like, oh, okay. but some of them might be, why is it that expensive? Are there, it's gonna vary by the item, and we're not experts in this stuff.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
we-
somebody will say, well, I can go to Home Depot and buy a door for $200,
Right.
but you can't buy a commercial door and
Right.
whatever, and install it for the number we have. So, some of those are really hard to explain. Some are line items, so when you're looking at it, it's because they didn't have enough information, but his history of doing cost estimate after cost estimate after cost estimate and working with us for, over 10 years, he knows what we mean by that note. So he puts a line item that makes sense to him.
allowance.
An allowance.
An
yeah,
allowance.
right,
Submit questions in advance.
Pardon me?
It would be very helpful if we got the
That was
questions in
what I
advance,
asked.
so
They
that,
have those questions in advance. If you, what's this 300,000 for? We can submit that in advance, and they can have an answer when we get together.
Because we looked at just so you know, John, we looked at the estimate, but so did all our consultants. We send it out to GGD, to our DLA, and to PAR, structural, civil, the whole gang, and they all look at it, and some of them come back with like, this looked pretty good, or we're seeing this cost go up and down, blah, 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 we've seen some higher numbers here, lower numbers here, and then Jerry takes it back and they average, and he's not doing this, he has mechanical consultants who are doing the estimate. It's not like him making up these numbers. They're doing the best they can, looking at, where this project is being built. And he's looking at how many contractors, that you're gonna get. Like, if there's, if a price is under this amount of money, you're gonna get this many contractors, but if you're in this is not a sweet spot for getting contractors. Like, if you were in a over 30 to 40 million, it's a hard sell to get contractors right now, period. And we're getting one contractors to bid on things right now, or two. If we I had a project that just got bid one contract. Fortunately, his number came in under, and the client said, we're signing them up, because, they didn't know what else to do.
So
And somebody else told me that they had a project came in over 400,000 over, but they got no other contractors, so they had to do it, or they weren't gonna have a project, because they knew the escalation would just rise up and wipe that away.
Yeah, I think we need to go section by section through this.
Yeah.
If John and I are the only two that are interested in doing that, we don't have to post a meeting to do that.
I don't think
but
that
I
we're
think that
not
might-
interested in
Right.
it. I do put probably more faith in what the OPM, their estimator, their designers, I feel like they've scrubbed this a good amount. So I think writing down the questions so that they can answer them ahead of time is the way to go.
But a lot of those questions will be, what does that mean?
That's fine.
That's
What
fine.
the question
And it's
is.
gonna be almost,
Or
there is a lot of them.
do we need X, or do we need 5X?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it can be a lot of those, and I think personally, that goes a lot more efficiently in a conversational manner, as opposed to writing things down. I could write things down, but I won't even know follow-up questions, because some of that's gonna be, what does this thing do? And you'd be able to answer that question.
Well, they may not.
very easily.
well,
They may not, and that's
probably may not.
that's the whole point, Mitch.
Yeah.
They may have to call PAR and say, what's this thing do? Wouldn't you rather have that answer, so you give them the question?
But then I think we're gonna get into several iterations of Q&A and Q&A and Q&A by email or whatever else, and we're not gonna get this done in a good way. Again, I can tell John and I want to just sit down and do this, and I think this is the time to do it, right after you get the cost estimate. We should have done it last meeting. We didn't.
Yeah.
And,
May I
don't
make
think-
one
don't think we should
suggestion?
wait.
If you are gonna go line by items, I just randomly opened the page, and I came to fire alarm, and I read down the 20 or 30 items, or I don't know what most of, if someone asked me what a fused disk is versus a CO relay panel and an F3 SSD connections to 120 volt.
You need to pay
all part of
Jerry
a-
to come to the meeting.
Yeah, well, it would be,
And
them coming.
I'm not
So
I'm not gonna ask for an explanation on every
Well,
single item.
that's what I'm saying, don't do that, because that
Yeah.
will.
I don't wanna waste
No,
anybody's
you'll
time.
just go nuts doing
I want
that.
us
Yeah.
to have the knowledge
Right.
to ask intelligent questions then about the price, as well as explain to people,
Right.
to the public, why such and such.
Right.
And
So
I
that's-
don't have either of those now.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, when you do go through section by section, don't immerse yourself too much in that kind of detail, because I think that could drive you, like, are you gonna really question if the length of the pipe is the right one or not? You don't wanna really waste your time doing that.
The other
I
thing
want
is,
you to-
there's a missing link here. If you're looking at that, if you don't have the specifications.
Right.
Because if you have the specifications, then it's a huge rabbit hole. So
Text.
how are, I mean, that, to your point, you're gonna have to start reading the specifications out loud to people at a certain point. So I think we just need to define the process clearly so that it's a rational.
And useful for you.
Yeah, I mean, we have the cost estimate. It's an important document.
It is, very.
Ask questions about it. And I'm having a hard time getting across that we should ask questions. Maybe I should stop talking because you keep nodding at everything I say.
There's no.
You could probably
Mitch,
describe
There's no
it.
disagreement amongst anyone here that we should ask questions about that.
Oh,
Not a
absolutely.
Not a single person here disagrees.
Okay.
You think we should do it tonight?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's 9:30 at night. We've sat here and listened to presentations forever. It would be more negative than positive. to
Well,
do
I
it
think
tonight.
we need to decide when we're going to do that, if we're going to do it. And if you can tell me it's okay to ask this in 3 months and make those changes based on that, and that's okay in 3 months, we do it in 3 months.
That's what I
Right?
just-
I've picked the 3-month target because I know that's absurd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which
We'll
is
have
why I said
another-
earlier, ask for that list so we could do that. That was my point.
Right.
Tell us when you need these answers by, so then we can go through and say, okay, you need the answer on this section, let's deep dive this section right, at this time, and we can do that.
It would be
But
helpful
to
if
sit
it
down on
was-
one night and try to go through, or 2 nights and try to go through, I think that's crazy.
I think it would be helpful if you wanted to do that by section here. That way we could match it up with something that we're seeing. We could do it that way.
Well, by agreement, we've already decided that you'll let us know what you need answers for
Yeah, I mean, we
by
can-
next week.
Yeah.
The-
Yeah, we'll do some sort of a list that kind of compiles all your comments we've received to date and tell you when it's important to get some answers. And obviously Todd and Tim will be highly involved in that process too. So and I would say that deputy has written questions too. Yours were almost all folded into the presentation.
I know, they look perfect.
And I think if you can get that to us as soon as you can, and then that way we can
Yeah.
get back to you if any of us have individual questions. We can submit them to the chief, and the chief can get them back to you.
Yeah.
It'd be hard for us to make decisions on things we have questions on.
Yep, if you don't know the answers.
Yeah, so. And hopefully, maybe you can make next week, but I understand that you don't know if you
I'll
can.
have to look.
And it's okay, whatever,
But it would be Zoom if.
It's Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, yeah.
it's Zoom, and if you can, somebody make it, just to
I'll
answer
take care of it. I'll
questions.
get it out. Everyone will get the link.
All right,
I do have one other thing for the meeting tonight.
you do.
Yes, I did order, have the deputy order the sign to put below the sign that says proposed. We had a major discussion last week about maybe you can incorporate it in the sign or put it, no. We just ordered the sign that says proposed and it'll go below the sign that's there.
It was delivered today. I gotta go pick it up.
We'll get it put in. Just want everyone to know.
All right, do I hear a motion?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.